I can hear it beeping as it's backing up. She's going to make a hippie band or something.
All right, so I'm going to broadcast now and start recording.
All right.
I'm just waiting on my monitor computer to make sure it comes up for the public. So good evening, everybody. My name is Andy Port. I'm the Director of Planning and Development for the City of Newburyport. I'm the technical moderator and host for tonight's Zoom meeting. Just handling the technical side of things. My staff, Caitlin and I, also provide staff assistance to the planning board. We will hand over the meeting to the chair. I just wanted to let folks know in the general audience who might be interested that there is a raise hand feature in Zoom. If you're interested in speaking, the chair and I will work together to allow you to speak at the appropriate times during the meeting when there's a public hearing item. And applicants were aware of who's making the presentation tonight, so we should unmute you at the time of your presentation to make your presentation and answer questions from the board. With that, I'll just hand this back to the chair.
Okay, this is Bonnie Sontag. I'm opening the planning board meeting for May 6th, 2020. I will go through the agenda and then start again at the top with the action items. We'll have a roll call and then public hearings. The first one is the daily group for 8, 10, 12, and 18 Colby Farm Lane, multiple applications. The second actually is going to be continued. This is the Institution for Savings, 93 State Street. The third is Vera Ristorante at 3135 Market Square for a downtown overlay district special permit. And the fourth public hearing is 342 Merrimack Street, a 6C special permit application. After that, we have a request for a minor modification at 262 Merrimack Street. Approval not required at 2 East Boylston Street and 138 State Street. Another approval not required at 332 Merrimack Street and 7 Savory Street. And a third approval not required at 9 Iris Street. Following that, we'll have updates and approval of minutes from the last meeting. We'll begin with the roll call. James Bruger.
I'm here.
Beth Delisle.
Here.
Ann Gardner.
Here.
Tanya Hartford is not here, I know. Leah McGavern.
Yep.
Rick Tainter.
Here.
MJ Verde.
Here.
Don Walters.
Here.
And I'm here. And also just to note that Linda Guthrie is our note taker and she's here as well. And as Andy Port mentioned, he and Caitlin are here from the staff. All right, we'll begin by going to the first public hearing, which is for 8, 10, 12, and 18 Colby Farm Lane. This involves multiple applications, which are as follows: site plan review and definitive subdivision, 6C special permit, and an open space residential design special permit. These applications in this public hearing for all these applications has been continued from April 1st. And let me begin by saying that in the staff report, it advises us to take a completeness vote for the definitive subdivision and site plan review. However, that was done at our April 1st meeting. So that is complete and the applications are complete. And we will move on to hearing the applicant's presentation, which I believe will begin with Attorney Mead. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you hear me, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Excellent. So Mr. Port, if you wouldn't mind putting up the PowerPoint presentation, and while he's doing that, for the record, Lisa Mead Tellerman Costa, 30 Green Street in Newburyport. Thank you, Andy. With me this evening is Matt Hammer of Landplex, who is the engineer on the project, David Daly, the owner of the project or buyer of the project, and Howard Snyder, who is the landscape architect on the project, and Jonathan Miller, also with the Daly Group. So the board has seen this in a preliminary fashion late last winter, late winter, I guess. It all kind of runs together now. And this is a proposal for 8 residential units, which includes 6 single-family homes and 1 duplex off of Colby Farm Lane, and we've referred to this as Colby Farm 2. So Andy, if you want to go to the next slide, please. So what we're going to do tonight is I've just introduced the design team. I'm going to go over the project goals, our existing conditions, some of which you can see right there on the slide, our yield plan, the OSRD plan, the building elevations, and take questions and comments. I might add that we had a very successful and in-depth technical review meeting with just about every involved city department a few weeks ago, which was really, really helpful. We have since met, figuratively speaking, with some other city department heads, namely Lise Reed, and we're working on meeting with the DPW, which has been a task given all of the conditions. And in addition, last night we had our first meeting with the Conservation Commission, which will lead to one of the comments that we have later on. But we pretty much closed everything out with them except for this one remaining issue that we'll talk about. So we're pretty excited. I think we've done a lot on the project. So we can skip over this again. I've talked about the design team. So the project goals are to support the revitalization of the Colby Farm Lane. As you know, there's the reserve at Bashaw Farm across the street, which is coming along nicely. We've got a number of units under agreement over there, and it's really starting to be cleaned up. A lot of work has already been done at the end of Colby Farm Lane at Low Street to help with the sight lines on either direction. And now we're trying to work on this side of Colby Farm Lane, which we refer to as Colby Farm Lane 2, which currently houses a number of industrial uses, truck storage, other barns, not really conforming with the residential uses of the underlying district. We also want to expand public open space in the northern pasture, preserving over 80% of the land in the project for protected open space, and provide some public parking and a neighborhood pocket park. And then expand housing opportunities. These are 8 modest-sized single-family homes and townhouse units, and one of the duplex units will be an affordable housing unit, which is actually has a bedroom on the first floor, which the Affordable Housing Trust is pretty excited about. So the underlying district is an R1 district. It has an overlay zoning district, which is the R2 dimensional requirements and use requirements, which is how we get the 2-family use in there. The lot area in total is 7.64 acres. 80% of that, more than 80% of that is 6.11 acres, and we're preserving that. And that'll end up being in that larger area, which will delineate a little more further. There's 655 feet of frontage, includes 4 lots in total. The current land use is this truck depot and storage area with a 2,000 square foot industrial building. There's 4.25 acres of uplands and 3.5 acres of wetlands. So under these existing conditions, we have a lot of really great conservation areas and natural resource areas, wet meadows, uplands, and wetlands all in that back pasture. You might recall when we first met with the board, there was proposed to be a trail and a bridge, if you will, over that initial wetlands coming in off of the proposed development lot. The Conservation Commission does not want that to happen. They don't want people trampling through the wetlands in the back, and they'd prefer to leave it just open and open conservation land. Then, of course, the other existing condition is the truck depot and the storage of trucks all around the site. So we presented a yield plan at our preliminary meeting with the board. The density allows 4 lots and 8 dwelling units. It has frontage on a private lane, which would be Colby Farm Lane, so it meets your requirements for a lane. And the housing would be 4 two-family structures and 1 affordable housing unit. There would be a shared driveway and utilities, and Phil has reviewed this, which I'll add at this point. I'll take a little Matt Sunder away, and I shouldn't, but Phil has given us a clean letter, as has John Eric White. So with the OSRD special permit plan, we have a single family house lot. We're going to show a picture of this later to you, which Matt's going to explain. It's going to get a little bit smaller at the request of the Conservation Commission. And so we're going to need to ask for some waivers on the dimensional requirements on the lot, which are permitted to do. We have 5 single family home structures at the rear of the of lot 2. And then we have 1 two-family structure on lot 2. So all of the housing units on lot 2 will be a part of a condominium association, and the single family home will stand on its own. Any deed restrictions that either the Conservation Commission or this board would request relative to similar things that you requested across the street, namely notice requirements that there are municipal facilities at the end of the street, can be included in a deed restriction on the single family house lot. So that notice can still carry through. The utilities, we have parking in the rear of the smaller cottage units in the single family house. And there is there's some guest parking that Matt's going to go through, and he's going to go through the drainage. And then we have a playground that's for the public at the front of lot 2, and 5 parking spaces, including a handicap space. So we're going to remove the non-conforming use. This is a public benefit. Over 80% of the land is going to be protected as open space. That's all on lot 3. We meet all of that requirement on lot 3. In addition to that, we're providing a public playground. We're still working with Lease Reed on that structure. It will be an accessible playground. We have included a handicap space. We provide off-street parking also, and we provide an affordable housing unit. I might also add, while Andy's shifting the plan here, some of the additional public improvements are going to be, we're going to be repaving Colby Farm Lane about 610 feet down from Low Street. We're going to improve the water service on Colby Farm Lane and upgrade the sewer service. And we're working with the Water and Sewer Department again on that, which we've had to cancel a bunch of meetings because of the pandemic situation. So I'm going to turn this over to Matt.
Great. Thank you, Attorney Mead. Hello, for the record. My name is Matt Hammer. I'm with Lamplex Engineering and Surveying out of Lowell, Mass. And I'm going to walk you through the plan set. If Andy could put the plan set up, we could walk through sheet by sheet on that.
Hang on just one second.
Yeah, no problem at all.
That's okay. I was under the impression you were going through the rest of the slide.
I just didn't know if the board wanted me to walk through the development of the OSRD requirements through the subdivision plan.
What's the preference of the chair?
And that's what you're asking Andy to pull up right now, those plans?
Yes, Madam Chair, I didn't know if you wanted me to walk you through in every detail the development of the lots, meeting the OSRD, and the configuration of all those plans, getting to the layout.
I don't think we need that level of detail, as long as, if you can give us an overview, just so we know how they've come together, because I'm still not clear, and others may not be as well, the distinction
Okay.
that you have for each of the lots. So, a high level view would be helpful.
Sure. So do all of the board members have the plan set in front of them?
They,
Andy just brought it up.
So Andy, if you could, I guess, go to the plan of land. Which is my sheet 4. That's great. So the development's going to divide it up into 3 separate parcels, or 3 separate lots, excuse me. One will be lot 1, which is this proposed single-family lot, which was going to be an A&R lot. And through the discussions last evening with the Conservation Commission, we're going to be showing you a reconfiguration of that lot 1 in order to suffice some of the concerns with the Conservation Department relative to the westerly lot line and its proximity to the wetland line. And that lot currently on this plan had 10,000 square feet with a lot width of 100 feet, which was going to meet the minimum requirements for zoning for that to be a single family lot. And then we have lot 2. And lot 2 we're calling the development lot. And lot 2 comprises of the layout of the road, the structures, and the playground within lot 2, with an additional easement that's going to be provided for the playground that's going to be utilized for the public. And then there's lot 3, which is what we call the open space lot, which is 6.266 acres. So I just wanted to identify the 3 lots that will be subdivided, and after this public hearing process, we would come in and get endorsement for that plan. The next sheet is the layout and lighting plan. And we had a technical review meeting a few weeks ago, and we slightly widened the entrance drive from 20 feet to 22 feet to provide better access for vehicles coming and going off of Colby Farm Road Lane, excuse me. So there's an access drive that comes in at 22 feet. It narrows down to 20 feet. There's a proposed duplex on the right-hand side with parking in front of each of the duplexes. Comes around to the rear to access 5 individual single-family dwellings, each of which will have parking for each unit, as well as an overflow parking for visitors, which is a 5-space parking area that's located in the rear of the property, excuse me. And then there's also an emergency turnaround area, which is specific to fire department, delivery vehicles, and trash pickup vehicles. There's also a primary snow storage area in the rear of the lot as well. There's going to be a sidewalk internal to the development, which is adjacent to the front of the single family units, which is shown as well as a sidewalk that'll be on the easterly side of the lot line that'll bring access down to Colby Farm Lane. The playground area is going to be divided up into two areas. One is an area that's going to be utilized specifically to the residents of the development, and the other area will be provided to the public for the playground. And there'll be two separate fence systems for the demarcation for those two areas. There'll be a primary fence going around the perimeter of the playground area, and then there'll be an internal fence that'll define the playground itself. That playground area also is going to have 5 parking spaces to service the public, as well as 1 handicap space as well. Additionally, there'll be a single-family lot, and shown as a single-family dwelling with a separate driveway access onto Colby Farm Lane with its own parking associated with that single family. So that's that sheet. Andy, if you could move to the next sheet, which will be the detailed grading and utilities plan. So this plan is pretty busy. Essentially, there's 2 low points to the project for the drainage. Each drainage system will be mitigated with a catch basin to an oil water separator to an individual subsurface infiltration system with an emergency overflow that provides an outlet to a riprap apron for each of the 2 systems. Additionally, the project will be serviced with municipal water. There'll be a water main that'll extend into the project, as well as the addition of 2 separate hydrants, which was specifically requested by the fire department. Additionally, there'll be gas and underground utilities, and there'll be a sewer system that will be servicing the project, which actually changed from the first submission, where we thought we were going to need to put in a pump station for the development. And we realized that we could actually run the sewer system by gravity, which is essentially underneath the entire sidewalk system, which will bring the sewer back over to Colby Farm Lane. And we would then put in some new sewer manholes within Colby Farm Lane and connected to the new sewer system in Colby Farm Lane that's being upgraded in addition to what I call Colby Farm 1. And then the existing sewer connection that was actually on the abutter's property, the Capo Negro property directly adjacent, which has a sewer manhole in front of their property from which this property connected their sewer to it, will discontinue that service, so there won't be a conflict with the abutting property with the sewer service. The single family dwelling will have to have an E1 pump because it's lower in grade there, so there will be one E1 grinder pump with an individual low pressure sewer piping system that'll come up and converge to the sewer manhole that's at the sidewalk termination in Colby Farm Lane. The project has been graded such that we're trying to respect the 25-foot no disturb buffer to the adjacent wetlands, which primarily the majority of the project does stay outside of that 25-foot no disturb, except for a small section of the roadway grading as you come up just beyond the duplex dwellings to the west, where we do grade in that 25-foot no disturb. But at last night's Conservation Commission meeting, the net benefit of the total restoration of the area within that 25-foot no disturb was going to outweigh that small amount of grading that we were doing. So that was, so there won't be any change on that grading. And that's the outline of the grading and utilities plan. Lisa, I don't know if this is a good segue to go into the plantings.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that since Andy's got this plan set up, Andy, if you could, there's a 428 landscape plan, which is an individual, well, it's 3 sheets, but it's a separate document that's posted. And if you could put that up, that would be super. And then Howard can go through his landscape plan.
I just want to make sure, by the way, because there have been a number of submissions for this application, I just want to make sure that we're referring to the correct plan. So let me know if you're, if there's anything different that I'm looking at.
Yes, so that's, this plan set is fine, but we're looking for the 428 landscape plan. It is on your website, and it was noted as something that would be presented tonight. And this is, nope, that's not it. That's the 423 one. And the difference is the shape of the duplex there. There you go. Thank you. Howard?
Yes, thank you. Howard Snyder. I'm a registered landscape architect in the state of Massachusetts. And my involvement with this is to develop an environmentally sensitive planting plan, given the location of the development and the improvements being done. In an overview of the plantings, the general concept is to use native plant materials that are appropriate to both the lowland wetland areas as well as the upland areas, and to balance that out with plant material that would be providing a visual identity that is similar to the development that's occurring on the other side of Colby Farm Lane. So if we were to start from Colby Farm Lane and look at the trees planted along there, they're generally in keeping with the same species and location as the street trees on the other side. And as we transition into the site, looking at these trees, the idea is to locate trees that are, if you were to say shade trees and street trees, more appropriate to open areas. There's a higher density and these buildings are closer together. So the location of shade trees that can be experienced, but not only underneath, but from a distance is important. So there's some locations being considered along walkways or along the drive. They are changed over into species of trees that will be more appropriate for the slopes towards the wetlands. Those are placed where there's, again, some visual identity and some transition between the existing tree line and the site improvements. In looking at lot 1 towards the top of the page where the turnaround and the 5 parking spaces are, you'll see a hatch pattern that is filled in between the edge of pavement to the 25-foot wetland setback. And that goes counterclockwise around towards lot 1. This species of seed mix is intended to be mowed once or twice a year, so to remove any type of invasive maintenance that may occur, mowing a few times a month. And so that also brings some of the wetland and the visual identity and the meadow feel up into the development. But when we get closer to the single family homes, they are rear, the entry into the buildings by vehicles is in the back, but the porch side we're considering to be front of the building. And those faces out towards lot 2 and the playground, and eventually towards Colby Farm. So anybody that's moving along Colby Farm that looks back are going to be seeing these porches. The plant material along the porches are lower growing, and they're meant to help establish a foundation planting. So these are just not rising up from a turf area. And then if we were to drive along the driveway from the back of the lot 1 towards Colby Farm, there is some plantings of shrubs and higher plant material to help buffer the residences from the vehicular traffic activity, to help start establishing as well a little bit more of a sense of private space from the public space. And then as we progress towards where the driveway enters onto Colby Farm, to the left, there is the idea that there'll be a little bit more of a heavier planting between that 2-unit structure, the duplex in Colby Farm, because it will really be the face of the development onto Colby Farm. The single family dwelling over on lot 1 adheres to the idea of some foundation plantings to help ground the building onto the site. As the lot line is reconfigured and from input from the Conservation Commission, we will be adjusting back to that 25-foot line where the lawn area and where that specialty seed mix will be done as well. So that is, in brief, an overview of the planting design as you see up on the screen.
Thank you, Howard. Andy, I think then this is a nice segue into the architectural drawings, which are also provided in, and they are on your, they're on the website as well, and they were provided as part of the presentation, not the ones embedded in the PowerPoint, but the separate sets.
Just one second.
Yep.
Lisa, just one question, and actually I would make a recommendation too, because there's actually 43 PDFs that have been submitted for this application. And some of the building elevations have been submitted in separate PDFs. Could you clarify which one you want to pull up now versus at later points? Because the architecturals are actually in a bunch, maybe say 15 or 20 PDFs.
Sure. So if you, you know how your the website has the oldest to the most recent at the bottom of the list?
Yep.
So if you want to go up from the bottom of the list, those are the most recent architecturals. And you know, you can start with the cottages maybe on one set, or whichever one you come to first going up from the bottom. We can start with that. Andy will just jump right into it. I'm not sure which one is on the bottom because I don't have your website up.
Yeah. Just, yeah, thank you. I've
There
got
you
this
go.
one up now. Just a suggestion for the future, especially since we were probably going to be doing these Zoom meetings for some time, I imagine still. I would recommend that the architecturals come in one PDF. That way during these meetings, it's easier to scroll through them.
Thank you. Your idea is taken. So this is a side elevation of the barn duplex. Again, as Howard indicated, this is kind of the face of the development. And as you can see where it's located on the right as you pull into the development, but certainly you should come down Colby Farm Lane. It is the building closest to Colby Farm Lane. And so here's the side elevations on this. And you can pull up the next one, Andy. So this is the rear elevation. This would be the, David, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the elevation that opens up into the parking lot. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
Right. So this is what you would see as you drive into the development. Again, this is clapboard, asphalt shingle roof. And we wanted it to be a barn, but not too much like a barn, keeping in mind what Leah McGavern had said at one of our earlier meetings. So you can pull up the next elevation, Andy. I might add while Andy's doing this, whoops, that's all right. We'll go to here and hopefully we'll come to the front elevation of the barn. But on the barn elevation, the barn itself, the Affordable Housing Trust is pretty happy with it. They don't have very many first floor master units, and that will have a first floor master. And so it gives them a lot of alternatives for people who may have some accessible issues to have that housing unit. So here is the single family home. This is similar to some of the designs across the street in Colby Farm 1. And obviously you can see the clappers being used for the treatment on the siding, asphalt roof, some shingles on the dormers. Andy, I think this is probably more than one page. Maybe if you scroll down. No, there we go.
I'm sorry, just to let folks know, when I make a change of the page, there's sometimes a momentary delay, so I apologize for that.
Okay. So there we go. There's the back and one of the sides to this unit. And we don't need to go through all of them, but there's the front again in sketch. So Andy, if you want to shift to the cottages, which should be up next.
Yeah, just 1 second.
Sure. So while Andy's pulling up the cottages, what we want to say that the cottage style with the front porch, the idea is to encourage community in neighborhood. It opens up onto the to that green space and then the playground in Colby Farm Lane, and hopefully provides a sense of togetherness. There'll be a various mix on the finishes of the exterior. Some will be shingles and some will be clapboard. Maybe there will be some board and batten. We'll have a mixture of colors as well. And here we go. So Andy, you can scroll down on these. So this is one of the elevations that opens up onto the park. And you can see the side and the rear. David, do you want to add anything about your design on these and what your thought was?
Yeah, we obviously, one of our challenges at the beginning of this in meeting the board preliminary discussions was that we were challenged design-wise when we had proposed the duplexes and trying to make them individually distinct, while at the same time trying to provide some character and aesthetic appeal. What we ended up quickly discovering was let's get away from the duplex and let's try to make a more of a cluster development here. That's, you know, it's getting much more common. You see this in the South and some of these pocket neighborhoods up here in Massachusetts, but more so in the South. Create this community effect, cluster these houses together, and have their own kind of distinct style. As you can see, we've incorporated some of the traditional aspects of the Newburyport, New England charm here with the farmer's front porch and transom windows. We've also incorporated the Nantucket style, which is a design piece of Newburyport's design regulations. It's a Nantucket style dormered roof. We have a double and then a triple dormer, as Lisa also weighed in on the fact that we're going to, each right now shows a clapboard, but we're more than willing to go into, we'll have shake on some of the gable ends. We'll have some board and batten to kind of dress these up. There's 5 different colors. We'll get to one of the slides that shows the 5 different unique colors that we're choosing. They're all more traditional New England colors, but we're also trying to somewhat mimic the look across the street with some New England charm, while also trying to provide some aesthetic appeal to this neighborhood, and really kind of promote that community aspect of this development. We talked a little bit about the barn. That's the anchor of the development. We didn't get to see what I would say the rear elevation is probably the best elevation that you will see as you come down Colby Farm Lane. And this kind of harkens back, obviously, to this area that was formerly across the street and probably part of this at one point, a farm. And that kind of anchors this project. And then tying in, as we already discussed a little bit a way ago, tying in the other piece across the street that is the kind of the new new progress across the street with the smaller, well, I say bigger than, it's about a 2,200 square foot single family house. And in the back here, we have these 5 standalone clustered single family homes. They're going to all be 3 bedrooms, about 1,800 square feet. We're going to be proposing there's going to be 2 to 3 different layouts, from a top floor master suite to a second floor with a master suite with a game room on the 3rd floor. So what we've found is we've been fortunate, and we'll bring this up in a couple of weeks with the board regarding our project across the street, that a lot of the units have already been sold out. But what we found, no matter what we've done to try to quantify every type of design aspect, that people still want to change floor plans. And through going through that process, we've understood some of the needs or wants and desires of some of the people that are buying in this area. So we tried to tie them into the floor plans and of the aesthetic appeal to these homes that we've designed here across the street. We think it's very fitting of the neighborhood. I can tell that I don't think you'll hear any neighbors on this. If there are any neighbors or butters on this call, there weren't any yesterday. They were really excited about getting rid of the trucking facility and incorporating this into the neighborhood and really making this a community neighborhood. They're really excited about it. We're excited about it. And these houses in itself stand for what we're promoting here. And I think it provides some charm, some really good houses with some livability and some real appeal to them.
Thank you, David. All right, so Andy, if you want to shift back to the PowerPoint, we'll finish up just to make a couple of final points. Madam Chair, while he's doing that, I think we have put forth in our application the criteria and how we believe that we meet the special permit criteria under 10H7 and under the OSRD criteria. We have met, as we've set forth in our presentation already, we have met the criteria related to the OSRD. And then under the 6C special permit, we've met the criteria. We showed the alternative development plan, namely the yield plan. We are offering to preserve open space and provide an affordable housing unit and provide a playground, which of course is not a 6C requirement, but it's over and above any of the other requirements that exist in any of the zoning. And so this plan, I want to show that we have had this reviewed by the fire department, and the fire department has signed off on it. There was a late comment this last week from Phil. He had signed off on everything, and then he came back and there's a new NFP requirement that a fire truck only have like 2 turns before they have to get back out, and this has 3. But the fire department signed off on it, so we believe we've met the criteria. You don't have a performance standard to that effect, and fire safety is met. So that's the emergency access plan. So if you go to the next slide, please. And you can keep going because we're going to go all the way to the public benefits because we've now gone through the, we can hold right there. So you can see both elevations, both the front and the rear elevation on the barn in this particular slide.
That top one is the one you're going to see from Colby Farm Lane as you come down. Top right.
That's the one you'll see driving down Colby Farm Lane. The top view is what David was talking about. Mm-hmm. So the public benefits, protected open space, the public parking spaces to provide public access. I might add that the Conservation Commission was actually pretty excited about the public parking spaces because they will also provide access for people to park in addition to the ones that are provided on the opposite side of the street to the trail on Colby Farm 1. Then we have the playground that will provide an easement to the city. The condominium association will take care of the maintenance of the playground. The green space in the rear of the playground closest to the single family home cottage units will be only for the condominium association, not open to the public. We'll have a bike rack down at the playground as well. And as I noted earlier, regarding the improvements both inside and on top of Colby Farm Lane will be provided through the development of the subdivision. So I think that we've met all the criteria for all of the above, and we're happy to take any questions at this time.
Okay, are there any pressing questions from any of the board members before I open this for public comment, after which we will have an extensive discussion of everything we've heard? Is there anything you need to have clarified at this time? Okay, then I'll turn it over to Andy to manage the public comment online. Let me just say that if there are members of the public who would like to speak, when you are unmuted, please give your name and your address and then make your comment. Thank you. Andy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So using the Zoom platform, folks can use the raise hand button to indicate their interest in speaking. I don't see any raised hands at this time. I'll give a moment for folks who may want to raise their hand, if anybody. We do have one caller who's dialed in, so it's not clear to me who that person is. And I just to be sure that person doesn't want to speak, I'd like to just unmute them just to see if they have any questions or concerns. This is a number that ends in 002. Does that person wish to speak? With no indication, I'll take that as a no. So it does not look like we have any public comment at this time.
Okay, so I'll close the public comment portion, bring it back to the board. I want to go through some of the issues that were raised in the staff report and see where we are on those. Outstanding would be, let me see here. There's a whole long, I guess this is also a question for Andy to clarify for us. Is there anything in Lee's Reed's memo that hasn't been covered yet that is still outstanding?
Yes, there's one thing, and I believe Attorney Mead may want to speak to this, but there was some discussion about a crosswalk at Colby Farm Lane and just basically better defining for pedestrians and in particular children who might be going to the playground space here, just to make sure that there's a safe crossing that's designated and that it's not sort of a free-for-all along the roadway, given that not only will there be residences on both sides of the streets now, but also the city facilities down the street. So we thought it would make sense to just better define that. I believe that they've made a couple of modifications, and I don't know if Lisa wanted to speak to that.
Sure. Thank you, Andy. So before you switch to the proposed kind of sketch plan that Matt prepared, one of the things Lisa wanted to make sure, Lisa Reed wanted to make sure of when Jonathan and I met and Andy met with her, was that the playground itself was defined by a fence, which we have done and she has seen, and that the area into it, you know, the kids were essentially funneled in, that it wasn't a wide open space, that everybody would be directed. And then how to direct kids or people or whoever, pedestrians from the other side of the street over. And so, Andy, if you want to put up the plan that we provided late today and showed the Concom last night, that would be helpful. So here we go. So here's a kind of a bird's eye view of how these two projects fit together. And you can see the proposed crosswalk, which goes right from the end of the gravel parking, right directly over to the entrance to the playground. And so that's what we're talking about doing right now. The Concom like that, obviously, because you can get down and then over to the trail at the left of this plan. But so, you know, we're open to hear the comments from the planning board on this, but this seemed like the most logical location given the park director's comments.
Comments from anybody on the planning board on that?
I actually do. This is MJ speaking. I'm kind of curious about the overall width of the road at Colby, at the new called Colby Farm Lane. And if I always feel like people speed down this road, they just do, because there's only one destination. You don't usually have houses. Is there an ability to do like the raised walks or something that's going to slow people down, or is the overall width of the road being narrowed to help slow people down?
So I'm going to let Matt answer some of that, but now, as you know, MJ, there are houses on either side, right? And now we also have parking on either side, which will be a natural traffic calming. Both of those issues will be natural traffic calming measures. I think it would be up to the city about whether or not you would put any other kinds of traffic calming measures within the road, given the fact that there are, you know, there are city trucks that go down to the compost and recycling area, and I don't think they're going to want them going over any kind of speed bumps or anything like that. I don't know, Matt or David, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, from this is David here. I can just weigh in quickly. I agree with the assessment that sometimes many of these trucks kind of move along that street rather quickly. But I agree with Lisa's assessment, and I base this on other projects we've done in this magnitude of size, that there is currently no housing. There's been a farm there, a couple houses on the right, but then it kind of opens up, and that's when people tend to turn it on because it's kind of wide open. Now that we're working on the project across the street, and soon to be hopefully starting this project, and there will be housing there. I think that will obviously mitigate some of these issues. However, I wouldn't be opposed to putting some type of signage up of speed or a residential neighborhood. And I'd also be open if the city wanted to do some type of raised walk, but I would probably want to give this review after maybe a year or so and see if the speeding is still an issue, because obviously the people that are buying across the street right now is very family oriented. So they're going to have kids and there's going to be people walking across the street to this playground. This crosswalk is really important. Speed is important. Safety is number one here. So it's a really good point. But I think with this density of development and the number of homes here, I think that will, as Lisa indicated, will be a calming effect. But it is something to monitor, and we'd be open up to putting a sign up at least in this development somewhere along Colby Farm Lane.
If you wanted, MJ, we could talk with Jamie and Tony and see if they, if they want, a children playground ahead kind of sign or some other kind of signage or calming, if you wanted us to do that.
Yeah, I think a sign would certainly be a good start. And then, like you said, reevaluate if you see if speeding is an issue.
Can I just jump in here? This is Leah. I'm sorry to say something different than MJ, but I think that signs there's so many signs around nowadays that I almost think they're more of a distraction than they are helpful. I would be a proponent of some sort of painting on the roadway, on the pavement, that indicates, I don't know if it says slow in large letters on the street or something other than a sign that is, to your side as you're driving by it. And
so I would like to take Leah's idea and go a little further. I live on Savory Street, which is a dead-end street that's only like 5 houses long. You wouldn't believe how many people speed down that street. I would prefer us to consider a speed bump or a dip or something that forces people to slow down.
So why don't we, I think these are all really good points, and what we, obviously we're going to seek to continue it because we have a couple of changes anyway to make, and that's obviously a lot for one meeting, but we'll commit to you to, between now and when we have to make our next submission, to talk to Jamie and Tony and see what they think would be the most appropriate treatment for this area to accomplish traffic calming for the development.
I have a couple of comments about the same area, if I could just jump in for a second. This is Rick. I'm looking at the layout plan as well as the plan that's in front of us right now. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like there is no curbing there. Is there any curbing along this area? I see the Cape Cod berm ends and the driveway coming out from lot 2, but I don't see what happens in the radius and where it meets Colby Farm Lane. Could you clarify that?
Matt?
Yeah, so sorry, the plan just changed. So Colby Farm, so our proposed development does have a Cape Cod berm within it. And then it transitions to pavement, to the existing pavement in Colby Farm Lane.
So just to clarify, where does the grass end? Say to the right of that driveway is the area within the radius between the property line and what shows as, I'm not sure what that line means. What is that area there? Is that grass?
That's grass, yep.
So looking at this then, here's the reason I'm asking the question. It looks like the crosswalk is going to go from grass on the north side to entering looks like a curb and partially the curb and partially the gravel parking area on the south side. So do either of those qualify in any way for ADA accessibility?
Well, that crosswalk was not intended to, at this initial preliminary layout, to be a ADA compliant crosswalk to anything that would be connecting to ADA.
This is Andy Port. Just wanted to know that this plan, it clearly is conceptual in nature because it was just submitted to us today, I think. So it clearly, as Rick points out, does not provide a landing on either side that meets ADA.
And you'd want to think about perhaps flipping the handicap parking space at the playground so that somebody could actually park, get onto the crosswalk, and get to the trail.
Oh, agreed. The problem is that on the opposite side of the roadway, what we call Colby Farm 1, there's no sidewalk in that area for that crosswalk to connect to.
Yeah. So I saw there's a sidewalk on the other side of the street there that connects into the development. Would it make sense to move? I guess generally my question is, could you look at how you're going to do ADA accessibility and make this a conforming crosswalk?
Sure. So what we could do
without
is,
solving it right now. Yeah.
well, what we could do is just take that crosswalk connected to the handicap ramp that's connected to the handicap parking space, of which there's going to be a sidewalk that connects to the sidewalk system into the development. And then that would just simply be a crosswalk over to the gravel parking area on the other side of the street, which all would meet handicap accessibility in terms of grades.
Yeah, you're going to have to, we've had such difficulty with crosswalks on High Street with the DPS telling us they had to get rid of crosswalks because they didn't have landing areas on the other side. We don't want to put something on the plan that is not going to pass muster, and then we won't have a crosswalk there.
Right. Well, this is part of the challenge, right? Is putting in a crosswalk where there aren't sidewalks on the street.
Yeah, it would be part of it is it's kind of awkward the way the driveways line up and the roads on opposite sides of the street. But if you could get a sidewalk down to opposite the trail, then everything would be peachy. But that's not going to happen, I guess.
This is Andy. I would just make the suggestion that if there is a missing crosswalk that's needed on the other side where Colby Farm 1, as we're referring to it seems to me appropriate that we then modify what's on that side of the street for this crosswalk to make sense for essentially a neighborhood that straddles the street.
Yeah. And just in regard to the discussion about speeding before, I think we're not going to have as much of a problem in the future because there's going to be cars parked in the gravel parking area and cars parked in the parking lot across the street. And that, I think, will naturally slow down traffic. I think it's going to be, right now it's just a wide open area, but in that future condition, I think we're going to have a whole bunch of cars parked there, which will tend to slow things down.
So we'll go back, and one of the reasons we put this on here is actually to get this feedback. So we appreciate that, and we will go back and take a look at it and come back to you.
Is it possible to? I mean, is it out of the range of possibilities to bring a sidewalk down to opposite the trail?
So for Lise Reed, her issue was she doesn't want the kids all the way down there and then have to walk all the way back up to the playground. She was trying to find, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, this was our discussion with her, the most direct route from Colby Farm 1 over to the playground.
Yeah, this is Andy again. I would agree with what Lisa has just said. I don't think from a practical perspective, it would make sense to redirect the kids that way or assume that they're going to take that route because kids being the way that they are, they're going to just run across the street if it's a long distance.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought that this parking area was partially going to be to serve the trail, in which case it would make sense to connect it to the trail.
No, so I may, I may have spoken in a way that was unclear, Rick. The Conservation Commission was just happy to have more parking so that people could access the trail.
Okay.
Any other questions about the roadway while we're
Yeah,
here?
this is Don. Just so Lisa goes back and speaks to Tony and Jamie and understands that it may not be just one or two folks in the planning board. I, for one, also am concerned about the safety. And I will agree that I believe there is sign overload and people don't follow signs. I'm concerned on the Saturdays when kids perhaps may be more apt to play, especially when we have people recycling and et cetera. And so I personally would favor some type of a raised bump on both sides. And to the extent that raised bump causes a municipal truck to slow down X number of times a day or week, whatever it is, in turn, that's a trade-off for child safety. I vote for that any day. That's all I've got right now on that particular topic.
Yeah, and this is Beth. I also would have a concern. Another option that may be worth considering is one of the signs that has lights that people can press when they're crossing. I don't know whether people think those are effective or not, but just another option that might be considered.
In the wider, okay, is there somebody else wants to speak on this?
Go ahead, I'll go after you.
There was also, it's slightly expanding the conversation to the entire roadway. There was some concern, I believe it came, was it in Phil's review about, or John Eric, about improvements to Colby Farm Lane and whose responsibility that was. And I don't want to open up a huge can of worms, but I would be remiss if I didn't bring it up as an issue that may have already been discussed. And if there is something already determined about improvements other than what we've already talked about on Colby Farm Lane, I'd like to hear about them.
Madam Chair, David Daly, I can weigh in on that. As Lisa noted earlier, we had a couple of meetings set up to meet with the mayor and the DPS staff, but we just, each of the meetings had to be canceled for various reasons, including, I think, related to this COVID at the end. I can tell you that we've had ongoing discussions with DPS on this project, and we had a meeting with them at 10 a.m. on Friday to hopefully wrap this up to discuss this new project, also in relation to our current one, Colby Farm one across the street, in the utilities, the roadway, and what they're looking to get accomplished as, and also what we need to get done to make these viable projects from a utilities perspective. So we've had some really good discussions with them. Hopefully we'll be finalized on Friday, but we both have the same objective, I can tell you that.
Okay, thank you. Rick, did you have something else on this area?
Just again, looking at the road area here, two questions. One is another way to potentially slow down traffic is to have a tighter turning radius. I'm curious why the driveway has a 24-foot radius turning into the site. That seems pretty wide for a residential driveway. It seems more like a road. So that was one question. And the other question was having to do with the playground parking. Who is going to be responsible for managing and maintaining that and making sure that it's available as public parking?
I'm going to let Matt handle the issue related to the turning radius, and I can talk about it. David, I'm not sure what's happening, but we can't hear you.
Okay.
Hi, Matt Hammer here. So the 24-foot radius was necessary for the swept path analysis for the fire truck apparatus.
Okay.
David, are you back again?
I moved back to my other location So you should be able to hear me better now, maybe, I hope.
Not great.
No, okay. I was just gonna weigh on the 24-foot swept like Matt indicated. Also regarding the 5 foot parking spots, that's gonna be part of the, least you can weigh on this too. Regarding the 5 parking spots, whether it's HOA responsibility, correct?
Right, it would be, so that whole area is going to be taken care of through the maintenance fees of the HOA. I'm not sure what you mean by making sure it's available to the public. We're happy to have a condition that says that in the HOA that they don't use that for their parking. That's one of the reasons we added the additional parking spaces at the rear of the units. So that the intent is that it's public parking, so we're happy to have that as a condition to put in the condo docs.
Okay.
This is Andy. I just wanted to jump in there and say I think just in general, it does make sense for the association to maintain everything in that area. And as Lisa pointed out, to have this special condition just to make sure there's no confusion over residents parking there and then displacing folks who might visit the playground.
Yeah, that's not a problem because that's the intent.
Okay, good. We'll follow up and make sure that gets in there as a condition. I'm wanting to move on to make sure we cover any outstanding issues so you can deal with them before we see you again. There was something I found a little confusing. While John, Eric, and Phil agreed that the swale would not be, and I think this is the swale in front of lot 2 near the, did I see it on the other plan, near the tot lot, would not actually be installed, but it's staying on the plan. Can somebody explain that to me?
Matt, you want to talk about that?
Yes, hi. Yes, Matt Hammer here. I've been confused about that as well. So I can get back to Phil and John Eric to walk through what that issue is that they're speaking to.
Okay, because I want to make sure that the plans reflect what we agree to and what's going to get built. So I'll make a note that we'll hear from you on that the next time.
Yes.
Thank you. Now I'd like the board to just look through all the different special permit criteria that we have in the staff report. If you have any issues with any of those items, this would be your time to speak up. So it's sort of a open-ended, but with some guidance as to what you might want to comment on or question at this point.
Actually, Bonnie, before we get there, I do have a question about another part of the site plan.
Sure.
This has to do with the fencing around the common open space and the playground. There's a general fence, which is identified as a proposed stockade fence. On the perspective view, it really shows like maybe a 3.5 to 4 foot picket fence more than a stockade fence, but there's no dimension on the site plan itself. Is the intention really to be what it shows on the perspective view? And if so, maybe that could be referenced in the plan and provide a detail in the plan set. That's the first question. The second question is about the interface between the playground fence and the other fence. It just seems to create some very difficult areas to maintain with those little angles in the corners on the left and right sides. And I was wondering what your thoughts were about that. And kind of a more general question is, why is there a need for a fence around the common area? It would seem to work more as a front lawn for the single family homes and the duplex if there weren't a fence there. So those are 3 questions relating to fencing.
Matt, I don't know if Matt or David, you want to
Actually, Rick, you bring up a really good point, because this has been a genesis of different ideas and concept as we've transgressed into this. And as you bring that up, I kind of see these two pockets on each end, thinking how are they going to mow those? So something we could consider, I'm just trying to look at it now, is just fencing in the playground and keeping that HOA, the grassy area, open. I think that would create a better open feel, and then get rid of some of those issues you were just, it's funny, I'm just looking at them now thinking, wow, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think that lawn would be great just as a front
Just an
yard.
open,
Yeah.
yeah, I totally agree. Instead of having to walk down to get to a fence, you just let the kids out, and the playground itself will be fenced in, and then you don't have these little pockets.
Yeah.
And so I'm speaking from my perspective, looking at this, of trying to mitigate some of those problems that Rick just raised. I think the best way to do it is probably just fence in the playground and keep that open space open with no fence, I think. Thoughts? Matt, anyone else?
I agree. You're creating less restrictions on the use of the space.
Yeah.
I think I don't have it'll be easy enough, because it'll be, you'll have the defined playground at least once. So that'll be accomplished, and then you can have the open area in the back. It's fine. From a legal point of view, it's no issue.
What we had talked about doing, and I think this could also provide some, buffer to that area, will be for the HOA members, is on that back fence, on that back gate of the playground, just say beyond this point is for homeowners only, or something like that. But that, just a little sign or something. But otherwise, getting rid of that whole fence would actually open that all up and make it a much better play area for accessibility. It's really nice.
And you might want to replace the fence that goes along the walkway with vegetation, so that people aren't cutting across the lawn, shortcutting, and just to have a barrier that's not a fence barrier, but a little bit like a low hedge.
Okay, we could do that.
Because that would preserve the lawn.
And just start the fence perpendicularly, but along Colby Farm, put that as some.
Yeah, David, what he's saying is if you take the fence that touches the Colby Farm lane and take it right up to the edge where it meets the playground fence now.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, do hedges.
Yeah,
sure.
Exactly.
All the way back.
Yep.
Okay. Howard, did you hear that?
I did.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm good with that.
And just one request, it would be nice to have a detail for the playground fence and for the bike rack.
The detail for the bike rack is in the landscape plan.
Oh, is it? I missed it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's the ones, Rick, just for reference, point of reference, it's the same ones that are up at the Kelly School that were just installed.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other planning board members want to comment or question on any of this?
This is Don. I'm happy to start off. Did you, I haven't seen anything yet from the Concom. And would someone mind repeating, did the Concom change? What did they change? And my specific question is, did they change anything that will cause you to go back and revise the site plan?
So thanks, Don. Yes. And this is it right here. So after last night's meeting, while we were at last night's meeting, between the great technology that we had, there was, this originally was lot 1, which is 10,000 square feet on the set of plans that you have. But you'll see there's a 25-foot no disturb line. And so the Conservation Commission wanted us to make the lot line where that 25-foot no disturb line is, and then take it straight back and over, because they would prefer not to have the not to have ownership of the wetlands and the no disturb by the homeowner and mark it with a fence. Because we're reclaiming this lot in the 25% no disturb, they were fine with the way the no disturb line remainder goes through that lot. They didn't have an issue with that. And in fact, this line is the line that the commission drew last night. So this is the site plan change from the Conservation Commission on lot 1.
Okay, thank you. Continuing for a moment on the Concom, did I understand you correctly that they are not going to, at least their initial thought was not to allow a bridge into the open area, the uplands area?
Yes, so if you go back to the one of the site plans, Andy, that shows the larger area. So this actually happened early on. You might recall when we had our sketch plans that we went over with the board, and I'm going to turn this over to Matt and David in a minute. There was a sidewalk that went along the proposed driveway in between where lot 1 is and the main development, lot 2, and went back to the back. And then there was a bridge over the wetlands into the upland.
Right.
And that David and Matt went in to talk to Julia about it, and her preference and the very strong preference of the Conservation Commission was in fact not to do that. So David and Matt, I don't know if you want to talk more about the environmental issues related to that.
Actually, just to keep things brief, I don't need to know that unless someone else on the board or wants to hear it. But I guess my specific question is, then how do you get back to that open area land then?
You don't. They don't want people back there, but they want
okay,
it.
So without being facetious, I probably would be more correctly calling it a closed space than an open space.
Well, yeah, okay.
And I'm not putting you nor the applicant in the middle. So I guess this is something that if I feel strongly about, we need to understand the balance of what the Conservation Commission or Julia wants versus the needs of the general public with respect to access on there. And I guess that was because it really didn't impact you one way or the other. In fact, I could say it probably saves you some money. I'm assuming you didn't push on that one way or the other. If that's what they said, then it would be up to some other entities, the public, this board, or other departments to push back on that particular comment or strong request. Would that be a fair summary?
Well, not exactly, because
okay.
I think that David and Matt can explain to you that they actually explained to Julia that the whole goal of that was to provide the public access to that area in the back and attempt to have that. And they find the public benefit in this in having it remain open, undeveloped, and undisturbed. So just because you don't have public access doesn't mean there's not a public benefit.
Well, I appreciate your point of view. And so right now, just to be sure that I understood it correctly, there is no way for the public to get back to any of the area that we're calling open space. Would that be a correct statement?
No direct access. I mean, if somebody wanted to walk by themselves, down the opposite of lot 1 there into the back, I mean,
Right.
If I could speak up to this, I'm David here, met with Julia, and I think one of the big concerns is as far as, again, we're with the planning board tonight, but as far as conservation is concerned, is upkeep and long-term viability of this footbridge, and who manages it, who controls it, and who pays for it, should there be any issues. I think that might have led to that, and also the fact that I think by looking at what it was going to create versus keeping it open, as Lisa was the benefit, the real public benefit was the keeping people away from it, to not disturb it, and keep it open space that way is the real true public benefit.
Okay, well, I think we've, unless someone else, I think we've kicked that one around enough, at least from my point of have.
Okay.
This is Bonnie. I just want to clarify, this may be one of the few, if not the only time that we've had an open space that wasn't prepared, was not open to the public for passive recreation. And I think we need to remember that open space is also for habitat and for general environmental considerations. And from that point of view, I support what the applicant is trying to do here. I would not want to encourage people to be walking back there. As I believe Lisa said, if individuals walk there because it's open and they can get in there, well, there's nothing we can do about that unless it gets to a point where there's so much traffic there that we have to review it and consider the benefit of keeping people out of it. But my perspective is that this is open space for environmental considerations, but not in the traditional way we've been setting it aside for passive recreation.
I think the balance here is we're actually, even though we're not required to, and we far exceed exceed the requirements for the open space, we're providing a public playground for active participation, which is going to be accessible and cared for by the homeowners association. So just, that's certainly an added benefit there.
This is Andy. Could you, Lisa, perhaps for the applicant, just clarify across the street, the fee interest in some of that open space was conveyed to the city, and
Right.
there's still a remaining piece that's to be conveyed. For this particular development, is the expectation that the open space is retained by the association? Could you clarify for the board?
I don't know that we have a particular expectation on that. We can talk to David about it, but I don't see any reason if the decision requires us to convey it so that, because obviously the whole tract counts for the OSRD, right? So, but so when we apply, we have the tract and we do what we're supposed to do. If the decision requires us to convey it to the city, so be it. That either that with a conservation restriction or just a conveyance for the purposes of conservation. However, the city wants us to do that, the applicant is fine with that.
Not to think for the board, for the conservation board, but we went into really in-depth conversations at Colby Farm 1 about maintenance and long-term upkeep and who's going to pay for that, whereas there isn't going to be much usage here. So that concern was somewhat mitigated. It didn't come up yesterday. I can tell you that we're open to either or, but our plan, I guess, overall was to mirror what we did across the street and convey that to the city. However, if the city's not interested, then we would have it part and parcel to the HOA. I just don't know if the city having more control over that is probably a more public benefit than having an HOA having control over it.
Yeah, thank you, David and Lisa. So I just, speaking for the Office of Planning and Development, as a general matter, I would recommend and prefer that the city be the fee owner of that land. In the end, I think that provides a better level of protection. So I'll leave that to the board and the applicant to work out, but I think that makes a better arrangement, especially since it provides better clarity to the new homeowners or future homeowners about where the bounds of their property and activities can go, including things like disposal of yard waste.
Yeah, Andy, that's absolutely fine. I would just request that it be a condition so that it's clear that's how we qualify.
And this is Bonnie, I agree with that.
Okay.
Okay, board members, anything else at this point?
This is Don. If someone else wants to go first, if no one else is in the comments, I've got one or two more comments, but if someone else wants to go, please feel free to.
Just take it, you've got it, do it.
All right, thank you. When I take a look at all the comments by the city departments, I believe, as I think the applicant has, that they really have all been incorporated. And as Phil Christensen, there were two minor comments that need to be made. And again, I would underscore the word minor. However, when I take a look at the energy and sustainability comments by Molly Ettenborough, she provided something on March 12th and then a follow-up one on May 1st. I would just ask the applicant for the next meeting to be able to go in either in writing or verbally address each of those comments. It's not obvious to me that they've been addressed, at least not specifically. And then a second part to that comment would be, which was not made by the Energy and Sustainability Department, is would you be able to provide any energy conservation or energy, alternative energy elements that you're putting into this stuff design other than the requirements that are contained in the current building codes.
Sure, Don, you can put a solar field on that open space. How's that? I'm just kidding.
Well, actually, I would, but that's
I know.
just me. I would.
You only have a couple of open pockets there, though. I don't know, David, if you want to address the last part of the question, but we can certainly address Molly's list moving into the next
Yeah,
meeting.
we can, and she kind of mirrors some of those same questions. I can tell you that we have won awards in green building techniques. We meet and exceed the stretch energy code. Part of that prolification of that is the fact that we try to incorporate solar into projects where we can. Across the street, we've allocated areas on each building where they could put solar. This site itself could do solar, except that the southern facing pieces are a little bit difficult in the back. There's some ability to do it on the single family and a potential for the barn. My only thing is, again, with that, you're dealing with the aesthetics of that. So we are constantly meeting and exceeding the stretch energy code, and are proud of that relationship we've built with our subcontractors to meet that, and our third-party hairs rater to achieve some of those goals. So, and it's a better sell to the buyers when they know that. So that's what I can say to that at this point.
Thank you.
Don, are you done now?
I am finished.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in at this point? Okay. I know that Lisa takes really good notes, so I don't think I have to review what you're going to be doing for next time, other than to say that it's generally landscaping, street improvements, and all the safety issues of crossing, and some of these issues that have just come up in the latter part of the discussion. Is there anything, Lisa, you or your team would like to clarify in terms of what we're expecting at the next review?
No, I'm good with that. I did take great notes, and a couple people on our team have been doing the same. I would ask just one. I just want to get a read from the board just to make sure that you guys, the board is okay with the proposed change to Lot 1, so that we can actually engineer that into the plan, and then create a proper waiver request from the board under the OSRD requirements.
Does anyone have any issues with that? And this is what, just to reinforce, this is based on the discussions you had with the Conservation Commission, correct?
That's correct.
And just to clarify, so the Conservation Commission was okay with the remainder of the 25-foot no disturb being in there?
Yeah, we literally drew the lines on the plan last night.
Okay.
This is Andy for the Office of Planning and Development. I participated in that meeting last night, and this is what was discussed. And so the office doesn't object to it, especially since it's a request that really came from the commission.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, so that,
Yeah.
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Matt Hammer, Lamplex. I can talk to the swale comment that came up.
Ah, yes, thank you.
Sorry for not having that answer readily available for you. So the shoulder of Colby Farm has, what would be a gutter line swale that's typical along most sheet flow roadways that do not have sidewalks and vertical granite curbing. So on the plan, we simply note to maintain a swale along the edge of the pavement. And that was recognized by Phil Christensen, but also reiterated through John Eric White's comment where he says that no grass swale will be installed. Lastly, it's important that this section of the road get improved. So what essentially is happening there is that along the shoulder of Colby Farm Lane, that work will be under the jurisdiction and the advice with DPW and engineering as to what would happen in that section of the roadway.
So this is still unresolved. Is that what you're telling me?
It's resolved in the way that that our plans can only address what's happening in Colby Farm Lane as they exist today. But there's going to be some improvements to Colby Farm Lane moving forward, and that particular issue will be addressed at that time, which is what John Eric White's saying.
This is very disturbing in the sense that I think we have the problem along some other streets. I think it's Hale. You may not be familiar with that, but where there was a project for, I believe it's a nursing home of some sort, and it's all backed up. It's overgrown. It's right at the side of the road. It's another road that needs improvement, never happened or hasn't happened yet. I don't want to see this devolve into, it hasn't happened yet. And so we all have to deal with overflow and bad drainage. So,
Bonnie, can I speak to that, please?
yes.
The only thing I could say to that is, as mentioned earlier.
Can't hear you.
Sorry, David Daly here. That this is allowing us to, as Matt indicated, to further discussions with the city on this street. As I indicated earlier as well, our goal is to make this this whole project include essentially this whole section of the street passable and a condition that's much better off today in the future than it is today, and that allows for that to happen. I think we're going to have some really good discussions this Friday and come to an agreement how we're going to make that happen. So this just allows for that conversation to go forward, and I'm looking forward to reporting back sooner than later on that.
Okay, so I just made a note. You'll get back to us at the next meeting on the outcome of that discussion.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, then we're ready to set a date for the next meeting on this. Is that correct?
Yes, please. If the board's calendar allows, we'd like to continue it to May 20th because we believe we can get all this stuff turned around by next Wednesday and into the board a week in advance if the board is amenable to that.
Just reaching for our May 20th agenda. Yeah, let's do it. And yeah, let's just do it and we'll make it happen.
And we'll have everything into the board by Wednesday of next week.
Great. Okay, then I need a motion as drafted. Would someone please make it by reading it from the staff report?
All right, I've got motion to continue the definitive subdivision application, the site plan review application, the 60 application, and the section 14 OSRD application for 8/10/12/18 Colby Farm Lane to May 20th, 2020.
Thank you, Don. Do we have a second?
Second, Rick.
Rick, thank you. Okay, I'm going to take a roll call because we're online and we have to do this. James Bruger,
Yes.
Beth Delisle,
Yes.
Ann Gardner. Ann, are you there?
Yes.
Leah McGavern,
Yes.
Rick Tainter,
Yes.
MJ Verdi,
Yes.
Don Walters,
Yes.
Bonnie Sontag, yes. Tanya Hartford, absent. Okay, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
All right, moving along to our second agenda item. 93 State Street, the Institution for Savings has requested a continuance to May 20th. And I'll take a motion to that effect from any board member who wants to make it.
Rick, so moved.
Second?
I'll second. Leah.
I'm sorry, but we have to go through this again as a roll call. James Bruger,
Yes.
Beth Delisle,
Yes.
Ann Gardner,
Yes.
Leah McGavern,
Yes.
Rick Tainter,
Yes.
MJ Verde,
Yes.
John Walters,
Yes.
Bonnie Sontag, yes. Tanya Hartford, absent. Okay, we are ready to move to the public hearing for Vera Ristorante at 3135 Market Square. It has to do with the downtown overlay district application regarding windows. Do we have John Santaniela? I'm sorry, I can't pronounce that correctly. In attendance.
Yes, yes, I'm here.
Okay, we know that you've met with the Historical Commission. We have their report here. Could you please give us your revised plan?
Well, we're sort of a little confused because when we started this, let me just go back a little bit and just regroup here. I came initially to the planning board. At that point, they said I had to go to the Historic Commission, which I did. We had one meeting, a physical meeting, and then two of the board members actually came to my location and we spoke for about an hour. And all along from the beginning, our initial idea was to match these windows with the windows on the in-street side. That was the initial plan. We had no direction really which way to go, but that's what we submitted the first time. Then after speaking with the Historic Commission initially, they sort of were okay with it, but they said, let's change the amount of, the window sills to, it went from 4/4 to then 2/2. And then most recently, last week, we had the first virtual meeting online. And I believe all the members were there. And then one of the members came up with using metal framed windows. And then everything went now to metal frame windows, and the whole group was hip on metal frame windows to look like the windows that are there now, exactly the way they are, except with the ability to open. At that point, I said, okay, we'll look into it. I did look into it with with 3 different manufacturers. And basically, I'm coming tonight to tell you guys that it would be virtually impossible for us to do it with metal, for the main reason being cost. It's an astronomical cost to do. And most of these metal manufacturers just make the frame. You would then have to get a glazer to put the glass in the frames, and they're not even insulated windows. However, I did find a number of window manufacturers that could make the exact windows that are there now, that would be able to open, except they would be made out of wood, and they would have to be just slightly, the rails, the divisions would be just slightly thicker. So before I go into making yet another set of plans, this would be the 4th set. It's starting to get very costly for us. I need some kind of direction from the planning board, I guess, which it's in your hands now. I don't know how this works exactly, but to give us some direction so we can make one and hopefully the last set of plans for you guys to make a decision on.
Okay, I appreciate you're not wanting to spend any more money until you know that you're getting direction
Right.
from the group that's going to give you the,
I mean, right now we're at, with the application, and we're just a touch over $4,000, which could be used for these windows if they ever get, you know, if we ever decide on something. So I don't want to get to the point where we've ended up spending more on plans than, you know, taking up half the cost of the windows, let's say, or maybe more. I don't know. I mean, you know.
okay. Well, let me explain. The Historical Commission is advising us. We have the final say. We take their input very seriously. And in this case, it's called the Downtown Overlay District
Right.
because we are the permit granting authority for an area that has extremely high historical value. It is the core of our downtown. And so in this case, I believe, and I'll certainly open it up to the comments of the board, so I don't speak for them individually, but as a board, we need to take very seriously what the Historical Commission has submitted. And so just to clarify, you said that if you went with wood for an operable window, that it would have just slightly thicker, what are known as muntins. What does the slightly thicker mean specifically? Because
It would have to be somewhere in between an inch to 2 inches wider in order to support. For instance, you're looking right now at a picture of the front of the location, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, let's go with the first set of windows to the left of the front door, okay? There are 1, 2, 3 rows of windows. One row is being covered by the awning, okay? That top row would have to be a set row that would not open. It would stay set. And the 2 rows below would be the rows that would open to the left and right. When they close, they would look just like they look now, except those divisions would be slightly thicker, because in order to make these windows operable and to hold together, they have to be a little thicker. It's just, there's no way you can do it. Even in the metal, I think that it would have to be done just slightly thicker. All the windows that are on Market Square, I don't know if anyone has recently walked Market Square, every single storefront has a different type of window. I don't think there are 2 storefronts that have the same. Whether they're historic or not, I don't know. But I mean, that's why initially, because of the doors that are there now, and because of the windows on In Street, we wanted to do a different design that was more in tune to match those windows on In Street. But they pushed harder in the end for these windows, which I don't know, you know, if that makes that much of a difference, because the other type of window would be easier to produce.
All right, I'd like to open it up to other board members to comment. At this point, would someone else like to jump in here?
I mean, I would like to see that image, the drawings that were provided. There was a comparison of the existing with the proposed, where the stiles are shown at about 3 inches. Andy, any chance that drawing is handy?
Yep, just take a second to pull it up. Here you go.
Yeah.
See, this is where we last left off, these drawings, what we were proposing before the metal windows came into play.
Leah, do you see what it is you wanted
Well,
to?
I mainly wanted to just bring it up and have everybody look at it, because to me, it just looks so different.
Yes, I agree. This was what the last incarnation from the historic board, we gave them this because this is what they asked for.
Yeah.
You know, 1/1. Before that, it was a little more divisions closer to what the doors look like, you know. And what that's, you see the window to the right that with the curved top?
Yeah.
We were trying to make windows that look similar to those, so they all matched, you
Yeah,
know.
I remember.
But as we kept going on each meeting, the window amounts were getting less and less and less. And then finally they said, we like it just the way it is. We want to keep it the same. To keep it the same, it's much more costly to do, but especially if you try to do it in metal, it's just, we couldn't do it. We wouldn't be able to afford it. But in wood, it could be done. But again, you have to make a little bit thicker, just slightly thicker. We can give you detail on that, but I want to get a sense from the board first. Is this what you really want? What you want to see on Market Square? I mean, it's, you know, it's the centerpiece of the town. We're trying to do something tasteful. We're trying to give a feeling of an openness and, you know, a more inviting feeling for when people are on the square there, when in the nice weather, you know, spring and summer. I think it would be nice if they could open, but, you know, again, we need some type of guidance.
So Leah, what are you favoring?
All I'm doing is appreciating that this is
Oh.
a dilemma.
Okay. Okay, so it sounds like there are two issues. One is the size and number of panes of glass, and the other is, if I heard John correctly, it could be operable or it could be just not operable, not open at all. Is that a consideration on your part?
Well, no, if we're going to change them, we want them to have the ability to be operable, to open. That was the whole purpose of this.
Can I just throw out an idea? It's probably not a good one, but just trying to think of any other solution that could possibly work. Is it at all possible to look at maybe a large awning window, something that hinges on the top, and it wouldn't open the way I think you're expecting it to open, but the idea is just to get some fresh air.
We've looked at those. The problem there is that they wouldn't fit underneath the existing awnings.
Awning, yeah.
And to go inside, you can't go in either because you have issues with the interior, what you have downlighting as well as beams going across, that it wouldn't be enough room for it to slide back like a sort of a garage door opening or something like that. It's not enough room.
Yeah, I was thinking of more an awning that could hinge and it could open.
The only way this could work in an open scenario is side to side, left to right, you know, bifolding.
And speaking of that, when it bifolds, it sticks out into the public space. Does it stick out any farther than the window boxes that we saw on the other?
No, they would be,
Okay.
they would open up, they would be underneath the awning and they wouldn't go past that, you know, wouldn't interfere with anyone walking by at all.
Other board members, where are you falling on this?
Well, this is Andy. If I could just make a comment, I think the planning board for some time now, in recent time, has been paying closer attention to windows and their design and materials that are acceptable, working with the historical commission, particularly in the downtown overlay district, obviously. I think there's a sort of a policy level balance here, or a question, which is you sort of have the confluence of historic preservation coming up with the balance of, you know, the economics of what it costs to do work on windows and what's technically feasible, you know, in terms of materials. But the other thing that I think is worth, again, your consideration is just, you know, there's an urban design question here too, which is what's good for the streetscape. So there's the historic preservation piece, which is obviously important in our downtown and in the city as a whole. And then there's the question of, you know, how do we activate the streetscape, and is that something that can be done here in that context? I would like to put a plug in for the benefits of having an active frontage of that facade, the interaction between the use and the streetscape. I realize that could be potentially, you know, butting up against the economic, you know, the cost of something or the historic preservation of something exactly like what is there in the historic images. But I think that's sort of a policy debate that the planning board may visit again in the downtown, depending on other businesses that have frontage on a primary way.
You have some examples on State Street also, right around the corner, with restaurants, for instance, like Sia or Agave. They were done not that long ago, I don't believe. And I mean, I think it's a nice, that whole street side there is nice because you have people sitting outside. We wouldn't have any seats out front. We have patio in the back, but it's nice I think it's nice to have that inviting feeling. I think it would be a major plus for the square, being that you have all these events there also. And for us too, I'm not going to, obviously we would benefit, I think, from it too. People being able to look right in without, you're not as, you get a peek inside without having to walk inside.
Can I chime in? This is MJ.
Yes.
I will confess that I wasn't at a previous meeting, which I think the drawings that are dated, I was just looking back at the drawings that were submitted 12/12/2019, and there's many more muttons. And I'm curious again, what happened with that? I mean, to me, that's much more appealing than what I'm looking at on the screen that Andy's showing. And I just wondered,
this is Andy. I could probably speak to that. I'll let the applicant speak to it as well. But having been involved with some of the process, and Caitlin was as well, with Glenn Richards and the Historical Commission. But I think what came about was there was a preference for recreating what the window looked like historically as best as we can assess. And that resulted in as much glass as possible, essentially, which is what you see in that top image there, that's sort of existing. And that's why, although the renderings below it suggest, more wood framing around the windows, there was a preference coming from the Historical Commission to try to maintain or recreate the historical image of those windows, which essentially is thin mutton lines and lots of glass in the divided light. I don't know if Caitlin wanted to add anything to that or the applicant.
Remember also that those windows that they want to recreate, these windows that are there now, this building has had multiple transformations through the years with different types of windows all along each transformation, so what is the real true historical window that was there from the very beginning? I don't know if these are actually them. I mean, they're definitely, these windows also, they're not insulated glass. They don't have any, R value really to speak of. So any kind of new window going in would be a better, as far as for saving of energy and whatnot, except for the metal ones, of course, because they're not insulated windows. They're just glazed glass.
Can I make another point? And Andy, could you go back to that other drawing? I would like to suggest that the current proposal right now is, to me, such a compromise. It's to me, it doesn't resemble the historic look, and it doesn't have the more quaint and charming, if you want to put that in quotes, look as the previous proposal that MJ mentioned, where it's more divided. I would almost suggest that if you're going to put in windows that are a compromise, I would rather them appear to be modern windows, bifolded with no divisions at all, and let them just be new windows. Because I also agree with Andy. I agree with your point about animating the square. I think that is a really important feature. And I think that having operable windows would be great, even if it is non-traditional, for the purpose of activating that outdoor space as well as the indoor space. So I'm just throwing that out as an idea, like just say, okay, maybe they're not divided at all. Maybe they're just modern windows, and the windows.
So you're saying more like Sia, because Sia has the full length glass.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Right. I happen to agree with you also, but you know.
Well, I'm not necessarily stating that's my view. I'm actually just throwing that out to the board because I would like to hear the board's perspective on those thoughts.
And just for clarity, the drawing I just pulled up, I think, is the earlier rendering submitted with the original application, which I think you could see what MJ was referring to in the bottom images, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I have an issue with these as well because if you notice, I mean, to me, they're so divided up. It's like they're trying really hard to be quaint and historic and not being. And the bifolds don't line up with the transom above. The transom have that horizontal muntins, which just never happens.
Well, you won't see those anyway with the awnings, but I get what you're saying. I agree with you.
Can I make one more point? This is MJ again. Sorry. I just looked up an image of the Port Tavern, which has the operable windows, and they're quite a bit longer. And I didn't look at Saya's, but they have enough of a wood frame to them that they have somewhat of a historical look, kind of character to them. I just wanted to bring that up, that I think they're very successful actually, and I think it does enliven the street front, just like we're talking about we want to do. So I'm kind of agreeing with Leah, and I just think that there's a way to do it without being quaint and cutesy.
MJ, can you clarify the Port Tavern windows? There are no divisions at all in that pane?
Agreed. Yeah.
It's the same with Saya.
Yeah. I'm thinking about that because that is sort of the commercial look that got developed later in the 19th century than when these original ones would have gone in. You have to remember this was right after the fire in 1811 when these brick buildings were built. And so they would have tended to be smaller panes of glass, not necessarily the minute ones, but it's definitely a modern look to have the totally open pane of glass. And I'm not sure I'm there yet. I'd like to hear from others.
This is Rick, and I know nothing about this subject, but it seems to me one of the problems with one of the challenges is the more panels that you have in these windows, the wider, the less glass results, because you need a frame for each panel, correct? And so when you look at the the bay that is to the left of the door, on that five panel bay, you end up with an awful lot of either wood or metal or whatever it is framing the glass so that it makes the glass. I mean, I'm sort of following on to what other people are saying, is in some ways keeping a lot of glass and having fewer panels provides less busyness and more light, I guess. And one question that I have, we're talking, and if you have fewer panels, then a bifold gets bigger. That's one of the problems. That's one of the reasons I think we're going from 8 panes wide in the existing conditions or 4 panes wide to 5 panes wide, just to have a smaller bifold. I wonder if it's possible to have some type of sliding system where 2 panes slide behind 2 other panes, and so you don't open the whole window, and you kind of keep a lot of glass you have right now, but you don't have this problem with a big bifold either sticking too far into the restaurant or too far over the flower box. Does that make sense?
Well, from what I've been told from the window manufacturers, depending on how wide the opening is, they would divide it, accordingly. Like, let's say the existing window now, the big part, has 5. When it opens, it would be, I'm sorry, the ones that have 3 would be, 2 and 1 if you had to keep that window tight. But if you're going to something like the Port Tavern or Sia, you can divide it evenly, and when they slide to the side, they're not going to stick out. They won't stick in or out more than the width of the the building itself. It will be underneath the awning, in other words. So
Okay.
it's not going to stick out into the street, blocking people or anything like that. That would be shown on the window detail in a new plan, obviously.
To your point, Rick, this is Leah. If you did just the sliding option and you're talking about enlarging the size of each one to get more glazing, so let's say you divide the 5-panel by 3, you slide it so that you only have, so then essentially when it's all the way open, you have a third of it closed. But when you do the 3-unit ones, then you would divide it by 2, I would imagine, and you would only get half the opening, which I think could be kind of frustrating.
Yeah.
And awkward.
As I said, I didn't know anything about it, so.
No, I mean, I think that the way it's proposed now as a bifold with these number of divisions is probably the most logical way.
Right. I guess what I was thinking was I liked the original design in a way, except that you do get all that extra vertical framing around, so it
You
really
mean
cuts down on them.
Each one divided so that there are 6 lights per window, per sash?
Or 8 lights or whatever it was.
Or 8 lights, whatever.
But it does, I guess I'm just looking at the plan and trying to imagine whether that would really feel as heavy as it does. Right now it feels very light because as is pointed out, it's just a sheet of glass with no barely any structure at all.
And that's the way the old windows felt. The ones at the top of this drawing, they feel light.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So I like
when
the
you
light.
divide them up 8 times, they feel heavy.
Yeah, and then you divide them up 8 times, and then you put a double frame between each panel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm looking at a picture of Agave, and I think they do have the same windows that were originally proposed, or really similar. They're 8 divided into 8.
Oh, yeah. They are.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at Agave at some point, that's basically what was very similar to, I think, what was originally proposed.
But do those
I think they do open, and they are
Oh.
they're thick. Yeah, there you go.
If I can
It
just
looks
say
to me
one-
like the big windows have hinges at the top.
And the bottom.
Oh, that's a storm window. That's a storm window. Huh.
Did somebody else want to jump in?
It was me. I was just, every time I walk by on State Street, obviously I look at the other restaurants because that's my field. When I pass Agave, and I eat there a lot, it's very hard to look inside of it because of all these divisions. When you walk by Sia, it's no problem at all because it's just one big pane of glass. It's just a clearer look to it. Honestly, for me, I prefer the larger glass panes. I just think it looks nicer. And, I'm not going to lie to you, it's definitely going to be cost-wise more effective to have less. The more divisions you have, the much more expensive these windows become. I mean, it's crazy what they can become in cost.
So I'm trying to imagine them. This is good to see Agave because it's closed. We've been talking about more the effect when it's open, but it's going to be closed and you don't want to be looking at a whole lot of frame. So I've got a question. If you were to have one division, so 2 panes of glass, basically.
Right.
And then made them, operable, swinging out as or folding, bifolds.
Right.
The only doubling of the frame, which would cause your eye to see a much wider piece of divider, would be in the middle where they come together. Is that correct? That would be wider than the other divisions, vertical divisions.
Right. Probably, yes. Unless they can develop some type of system. You know, I'm not a window manufacturer, so I wouldn't know, but I would assume, yes, it would be wider. Like you see in agaves here in this picture where the hinges are, you know, those the width, you have to have that width there. So
It's double basically because you have two frames coming together as opposed to just one frame if it didn't open at all.
I see, yeah.
Okay. Can we hear from anybody else with an opinion on this at this point?
Yeah, this is Don. I guess my only other thought would be, and I'll take a walk. I'd like to see if we went with something different than what the Historic Commission was recommending, or what the applicant is perhaps suggesting, or some of the board members, an open pane or one or two. I'm going to take a walk. I'd like to see how it looks in the context of all the other buildings there on Market Square, or at least when I think of it more being on Merrimack Street and seeing how that looks, say, across from the firehouse. So I'm just going to do that. I'm assuming we're going to continue this, but just I'll give you that. That's my only thought at this point.
I can tell you right now, there's nothing there with only one pane of glass that I remember. There may be some with two, but they're mostly 8s and 12s, but they don't open out. So see that we were adding another layer of functionality here that most of the others don't have. So there is variety, and we can add to the variety certainly, and we can make it as, you know, as modern as we want it to be within the context of a historical building. But I do think we have to consider how it all looks together. And I think Don's idea is really good to have a look at that. I would
also, when you go there, you'll notice too, the picture you have currently of the storefront is no longer like that, because we've painted all the molding to match. It's all black now, so it has I think, a much nicer effect. So you can picture almost the glass. See where all the white trim is now? It's all black now with the new awnings, the new signs. So I think it would be worth going down to take a look at, because it looks totally different just with the paint job. And I think you'll see that maybe just big panes of glass would look nice against the black, you know. But, you know, definitely go down and take a look at it. I think we've improved it dramatically from what it looked like.
So I'm going to make a proposal that you bring us two designs, one with a single pane of glass.
Okay.
And another with the dividing line through the middle too.
So like the one you're showing here, except
the existing,
dividing, going horizontally?
Yeah, they like what you have at the top, the existing elevation.
I see. Okay. All right. So it's single pane versus a double.
Is that, I don't know. I'm just trying to summarize and bring this to some conclusion so you can go back to your design plan. Have I ignored anything, or do we need to add something else to this request?
Well, this is James. I'm sympathetic to the applicant here. He's already spent $4,000 to change windows that are not historic, and which says they're temporary. I mean, the next applicant's going to come in and wants slightly different windows. I think what he's presented to me personally is acceptable, and if it was up to me, I would approve it as is today. I mean, what he's asked for.
Which as is, we have two different versions, and then his personal expressed preference for no divisions in the class at all.
I would go for that as well.
Well, wasn't that my proposal that we look at the two together?
I guess what I'm saying is if we can't imagine the little lines going, not being there on these pictures and just stating it in our decision tonight, I mean, I don't understand why we're going to.
Well, what I would like to see, and this is an extension of what he may be planning to propose, to show us, is some sort of physical example of what it would look like, not just a flat drawing. An example of the kind of window, maybe in another space, so we can see what it looks like when it's open and when it's, as well as the design on paper that says what it looks like when it's closed.
I'm just stating my opinion. I think we're taking this way too far. And
All right, let's hear from other people. Are there others with James? Do you want to just wrap it up?
And this is Andy. I would note, I don't know if anybody from the general public is interested in commenting on this particular application.
I'm sorry, thank you. Let's open the public comment and then we'll come back, give us time to reflect. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak at this point?
Not seeing anyone at this point raising their hand.
Okay, let's bring it back in. Can we hear from people we haven't heard from yet on the planning board on this issue? Do I need to call on you?
Well, this is Ann. It's not that I don't care. It's that I like to listen to what the Historic Commission says, but if it doesn't make sense financially, then that doesn't make sense to me. As a consumer, sitting in a restaurant with the windows open, it feels great. I like it. So I'm sorry. I wish it were more simple. That doesn't help anything. But I am not an architect and I'm not a, have expertise in, historical properties. So I just feel I don't have much to offer.
Well, I can offer you guys this. The estimate that I got from 2 different manufacturers of the metal windows that they wanted us to do, the Historic Commission, ran between the low side of $105,000 to the high side of $130,000 for 3 sets of windows. I mean,
that's ridiculous.
Exactly. I mean, it just makes no sense. So, I mean, we've spent a small fortune to get this place and improve it. We've done tremendous amount of improvement on the inside to make it a much better, I think, place. It was a beautiful place before, but I think we've done we've done a really wonderful job in it. We spent a lot of money and we're not even open due to obviously what's going on. So, we can't just keep pouring more money on top of more money. At a certain point, you have to make a decision. Is this going to be something we can live without if we, so that's where we're at right now, so that's why I'm at the mercy here of the planning board. Please give us a direction, something, anything.
This is James again. I have a question. Do you own this building? Is this?
No, we rent.
Okay, it doesn't really matter. I was just curious. Thank you.
I mean, I'll throw out there that I'm prepared to take a vote, but maybe others aren't.
Can I just, this is MJ again, make a point about what Ann said and listening to the Historic Commission and also listening to what seems to be the desire, which is, it is wonderful to have all these open windows right on Market Square. Can we just go against the Historic Commission?
Well, of course, yes. Okay. It's advisory.
Okay.
I'm
Well, I don't
sorry.
think we'd be going so much against them. I would support the decision to go to a metal frame. I absolutely would, except that I think it's unrealistic. 120.
No, I agree. I agree, Leah.
So I don't. It's not a real strong
I mean,
disagreement.
if you look across the street on Market Square to sea level, they have full length, top to bottom open windows that are also, I believe, single pane, if I remember correctly.
Right, which is like the Port Tavern.
Exactly.
And Saya.
They're full, top to bottom.
Yeah. And I'm in favor of doing something like Saya, which to me is basically taking your current elevations that you have and just eliminating the middle mullion and having those be single pane. But keep the same number, keep the 5, in the large window and the 3 and the 3.
And I'll just throw out on top of that, and this is Leah again, is that I think when it's all painted black, I think this is very effective at Saya. It really does complement the old building, I think.
It does, yeah, I agree.
If you guys have a chance, please walk by now because you can get a feel for it. Just the way it looks now in all black, it looks so dramatically different than it used to look. And we haven't done anything to the windows yet, but I mean, just take a look to see, you'll see that it gives a different effect.
So are you saying you want us to wait till after we look at it?
Yeah, we might be working to a vote.
I mean, let's I don't think we're going to be opening anytime soon. So, although I will say from whenever this decision's made, the windows will not be made overnight. It takes time. Would I like to get these in as soon as possible before we'd open? That'd be great. But again, I have no control over what's going on. So, again, it's up to you guys to give us some direction.
So this is Beth. Can I just to clarify, so the picture that we're looking at right now is what the Historical Commission seemed to be indicating was what they would be interested in having there. And then recently they said instead of these, they want metal frames because they're thinner.
They wanted the windows at the very top of what we're looking at. The existing windows. They went back to that after 3
But they can't be opened. There's no way, or to make those to open.
In order to make them open with metal frames like they want, like I said, it's super expensive. The person who brought this to the forefront on the commission, he was noting that these are the windows that are in downtown Boston, and I was saying to myself during, I didn't say anything, but in my head, what does downtown Boston have to do with Newburyport?
So we're at the point where we're looking at the proposal now with 2 panes or the possibility of 1 pane, right?
Yes, that's what it sounds like.
And that they will open and they'll be made of wood.
And I would be willing to stick my neck out and make a motion, unless you think that was inappropriate, Bonnie.
No, go right ahead.
And I'd second it. This is James.
Well, you don't know.
But I haven't made it yet, James.
Seconded.
I'm reading your mind.
Yes, apparently.
I would like to hear it, Leah.
Well, the only thing is that we don't have an image to go with it, but I would like to make a motion that we approve the division of the bifold doors as shown in this drawing that's up on the screen now, but without the divided single muntin on each window, so that they were clear windows each.
I did read your mind.
That's my motion, and I can make it clearer if need
Are
be.
you saying then the top, what we're looking at right now, the very top row of windows that are existing now, correct?
No.
Correct.
No.
No. It's actually, it would be the one, the bottom drawing, the one where there's no awnings.
Okay, so the bottom ones just minus the division in the center of the windows.
Correct.
Right.
All clear glazing in the bifold.
Right.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
Who's that? James?
Yes.
Okay, let's take a vote.
Just one quick thing.
Hey,
before-
Bonnie.
I'm sorry.
Bonnie,
further
this is
discussion.
Caitlin. Hey, Bonnie, this is Caitlin.
Yes.
Do you,
Would you mind taking a quick look at the DoD special permit draft findings that we provided you in the staff report and perhaps reference those in your vote? On
What,
page
the
7.
final ones, the last two? Or
Yes.
all of them?
The last two.
The board found that the project complies with section 2027F5 of the Newburyport zoning ordinance, and the window replacement is compatible with the existing historic buildings and structure within the DOD. Is it?
Yeah, and this is Andy. Just to clarify, what Caitlin's getting at is just that the board has to make certain findings on different permit types, and this particular one calls for that sort of finding. So we're just clarifying that if the board is going to make a motion to approve, it makes sense to make the findings required by the ordinance as well.
Well, I have my question out there. And the second one is, the board found that the proposed replacement windows are of an acceptable quality, style, and design and meet the intent of the DOD ordinance. Somebody's got to make an argument for that, because single pane windows, I don't know how they do.
well, they wouldn't be single pane. They would end up, they would be a double insulated glass.
She just
No,
means
I
not
mean,
divided.
It's no divided light. Sorry, no divided light in it, and that, I don't see how that fits the historic character in any way of the buildings that are there, or any of the windows that we have there. So I need an argument for that before we can honestly put this forward.
What, can I interrupt for just a second? Is it possible to get someone from the historical commission to come? Like if we continued this, to get somebody from the historical commission to come and give us their input and have a conversation where we might come to some sort of a compromise.
This is Andy. Just to clarify on that particular question, I did actually have a conversation with Glenn Richards to see if he would be able to participate in the next planning board meeting for another item on the 20th. He did say he would be able to participate for that meeting. I don't know if this item would be continued to that date, but he did say that date he could do.
Maybe what we can give him for feedback is that we don't think the metal frame is feasible financially for the applicant. So we are not accepting that recommendation from the Historic Commission. Can they work with us on another concept where the windows could be opened?
That's only one of the issues. The other is the number of divided panes in there.
I think I could put an argument for that it's historically appropriate. I mean, I think we had a discussion about the openness of the glazing that's there. I think it gives a very similar open feel. I think also the fact that we're allowing a different use for the windows. We're allowing them to be operable. Once you make that decision, then you're following through on what's the most appropriate type of window, and it's a different discussion.
Okay.
I guess this is Don. As much as I don't like to kick the can down the road, I appreciate Leah's and James' second. I guess I would find it useful to, especially if the Historic Commission chairperson could be here next week and just to hear a point and counterpoint. And I surely would be able to make a decision at the next meeting, one way or the other. But I do agree that it's time for us. I'm not convinced it's tonight, but definitely by next meeting, I'm ready to make a decision.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to withdraw your motion?
Oh,
Never
sorry.
made one. Oh, yeah, you did.
Yes, I'm happy to withdraw the motion, and I will expect to make it again at the next meeting.
You promise?
Yep.
And Andy, can you talk with the chair and kind of give him feedback of what we went through tonight?
Yeah, we can certainly convey what's been discussed tonight.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be up to the chair and the commission as to whether or not the feedback he's giving is coming from him as an individual member, or as opposed to a representative of the commission, because obviously the commission would need to meet if they're going to make a new set of feedback
Right.
themselves as a group.
Okay, and in that case, I don't think we need any more designs. John, you don't need to spend any more money on this.
Thank you.
Bonnie,
To that point, I would just say that if it might be helpful, because you're going to have to do this anyway, because once we approve it, you're going to have a record of what we've approved. If you just have your designers remove that middle mutton so that we can have an image of what it is that maybe at least some of us are proposing.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
Okay, so I'll have them just remove that. Yeah, okay, we can do
But
that.
keep this one as well, so that we have the comparison of the two, because there may be some discussion. There may be different motions that people want to consider.
All right, well, I'm assuming you're keeping this in the file, right? So I don't.
Yes, yeah,
Right,
so we can
okay.
pull this up, and then we can pull up the other one, so that
So
whatever we decide on, you're good to go.
Next week? Is it next week or?
No, May 20th. So we need to make I need a motion to continue this hearing until May 20th, please.
before you that motion, could I have another question? Thank you, Caitlin, for pointing out the findings. I'm just wondering about the second finding. It says it's an acceptable quality, style, and design. Do we need to have any more? What we've had so far is basically design, right? I don't think we have anything about the details of the quality of the windows. Do we need any more information about the manufacturer or anything like that in order
We
to make that
typically ask
finding?
for cut sheets.
Yeah, there
Yeah,
should be a cut sheet on the site. I don't know if we want to pull it up now, but we can save it for the next meeting if you want.
Do we have it now? I didn't
Yeah,
see it.
this is Andy. I would also say, in addition to a cut sheet, sometimes the board is required to ask the applicants to bring a sample in or show a sample, just because it's a little better than looking at a cut sheet, but that's up to the board.
Well,
We
Is there a
can't
cut
do
sheet?
that online.
how am I gonna get a cut sheet on a window that's custom? That
The
hasn't,
manufacturer should provide that for you if you ask them for it.
on a window that hasn't been drawn up yet by the
Yeah,
manufacturer?
because they have a standard way of manufacturing it that would apply to all the windows they custom make. I would think.
Yeah.
Just ask them for it. They should be able to provide. They have to do this for a lot of their clients. It's standard practice.
Well, when we were looking initially to use, we were gonna go with Marvin windows. Everyone's heard of Marvin, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what the doors are Marvin, that are to the, the entrance doors are Marvin. Those are wood made with, they're cladded. They never have to be painted. They look like wood. You have to go right up to it to look at it.
So who is your manufacturer for the windows?
It's through our architect. He's located not too far from Newburyport, but they're a Marvin distributor. So
Well, just
Marvin-
ask your architect. He can get you a cut sheet.
All right, I'll try. I'll give him a call.
It's totally standard.
Okay.
All right, are we ready for the motion to continue?
Yes.
Oh, just one last question. Would
Yeah.
be taking out the middle bar there, but you want how many divisions? Like in the top row or the middle row? How many?
The middle row.
Each bifold sash would have no divisions.
I understand that, but how many
Window.
sets of windows do you want? Single windows on the top level, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then one under it is 1, 2, 3. Oh, it's 5 also, but it's smaller.
No, the transom, the coordination of the transom and the bifolds seem appropriate.
Okay, all right, good enough.
All right. Any other comments, questions, advice? All right, I need a motion to continue this hearing until May 20th, please.
So moved, Dan.
I'll second it, MJ.
Okay, Anne and MJ. Now for any further discussion? Roll call. James,
Yes.
Beth,
Yes.
Anne,
Yes.
Leah,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
MJ,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
me, yes. All right, we'll see you on the 20th. Thank you, everybody. All right, hang in there. Oh, we've got a special permit, sorry. 6C, but special permit for 342 Merrimack Street. There's been an informal meeting and we have the meeting minutes from that to remind us what we discussed. But for a more up-to-date presentation, I turn it over to Lisa Mead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are we back on here?
Yes.
Excellent. Lisa Mead, me, Tellerman Costa, on behalf of the applicants, the Lynches at 342 Merrimack Street. And just a reminder for the board, just over a year and a half ago, we came to the board to talk about a 6C for this property. Property currently contains a two-family residence, which is on a lot of 13,315 square feet. The residence was originally constructed around 1785. There have been a number of modifications since then. It was constructed by Mr. Whitmore, and it was known as the Jacob Whitmore House, is known as. Historically, it was a single-family home until the late 80s. Importantly, in addition to Mr. Whitmore, however, it was also purchased and occupied by John Currier of the Currier Shipyard in the 1820s, which was directly behind it and beyond Merrimack Court on the Merrimack River. After we, and if you can go to the next slide, it could be the delay, I guess. Up until it was updated in the mid-19th century, we have discovered by our research and the research at Mass Historic, the front second floor bay was added in the early 20th century, and there was a rear shed dormer added in 1980. You might recall that when we were in here before, we showed you these two historic plans that showed the main house on Merrimack Street, and then a row of houses along Merrimack Court along the streetscape on Merrimack Court. So the proposal is to restore the existing residence to its historically single-family home use, the preservation of that current two-family use on the property by constructing a second subordinate single-family home that faces Merrimack Court. We gave our initial presentation to both you and the Historic Commission, and Mass Historic has agreed to hold the preservation restriction as well. Given the nature of the house, they also in this whole process updated their Form B in accordance with their additional research as well as that of Mr. Dre that we had provided to you before. One of the things that the board had requested, I think it was Aaliyah, was that they wanted that we had pushed the house back into the lot to meet the setback. And Leah had requested we bring it forward so that we have that more of a streetscape in the back. And so we received a dimensional variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals in order to do that. That was actually recently extended because it was going to expire at the end of this month. So we've spent the last couple of this last few months working out the details of the design on the project. And Andy, if you could go to the next slide. The architect on the project is David Curie, and David, I believe, is with us tonight. And so David, I'm going to let you take them around the house and then your proposed renovations and restoration.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. Lisa, are you heading this, or would you like me to?
No, so go ahead. You want to take? Can you see the photo of the house, the front
Yes.
elevation?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah. So Dan and Judy Lynch. This is David Curie from Curie Design. Hired me to help them work out the floor plans once they renovated the historic home. And as you can see on the front, the piece that was added early in the century. This past century is was going to be taken off. So with that, they also had needs on the back side of the property where a shed, kind of a two-story shed, had been added. You can see on this side, the very back on the left, going back toward the garage, you can see a shed type structure, actually just very last thin slice.
And if you hang on a second, David, if you go to the next slide, Andy, it's the rear shot. There you go.
Okay, and there's the rear piece of it. So there's the gable structure coming out, and then beyond the gable is this two-story shed structure, in which they have it's not insulated. It's got a very small staircase between the two, and they keep kind of gardening things and other boating type things in there. So they wanted to take that off, and also to take off the two-story, the second story pressure treated deck, because there's no need for the egress anymore. Instead of having that, they wanted to bump out on the first floor for a kitchen space to open up a little more aesthetically, in a more aesthetically pleasing way to the backyard. The changes to the structure, we would remove that front portico. We'd remove that rear two-story shed, remove the deck, and then the new things would be constructing the one-story kitchen. And above the kitchen, it made sense in our minds to keep actually a second-story deck, no stair anymore coming down, but just to do a flat membrane roof as opposed to any other kind of a roof, which we didn't feel looked as well as the flat with a really nice railing going around it. So that's what we came up with for the new rear of the property, of the house. So you can see this is the existing, top left is the rear, and Dan works in millwork. Dan loves millwork and is excited about actually that rear gable. Once that shed, that two-story shed comes off, he wants that gable to match the columns and flying rake detail, the rake which is pronounced on the two sides. So he's going to capture that trim on the back of the new structure when he takes that shed off. As you can see, there's the pressure treated deck and stairway goes away, it will go away. Lower left drawing, you can see the existing rear shed and stairway we're proposing to take away, as well as the front on the right side of that drawing, the front piece. And then last, bottom right, you can see basically the elevation as it is, that front piece that is going to go away. And is there a...
Yeah, the next slide will be the proposed condition.
Yeah, this should say EC3. I realize that it says A3. They both say A. Yeah, okay. So this is the new rear elevation showing the kitchen
No, it
a
isn't.
little on the top left. The north elevation has the kitchen bump out. It's roughly the same footprint as that old pressure treated deck was. It's a little smaller actually. You can see the railing going around up top there. And then there is actually an entry where we're showing that door to the right of the one-story kitchen. That there actually is a doorway there that went through that shed out the building. Now that the shed is gone, we just have the door there, and a new window in that new gabled structure as well. It's part of a master bath there actually, and you can't see it in this drawing, but remember there is a garage, basically garage type shed. So this window will kind of look to the backyard, whereas the garage is kind of just to the right of that. Looking at the east elevation to the right of that, we have the one-story kitchen structure to the right, and then no longer a two-story piece on the front facing the street. And then going to the lower left drawing, we have the new, we feel better looking gabled structure to the left, looking out toward the backyard. There's a door there now to enter into a mudroom. The driveway is there. The driveway is right alongside the house, so you'd enter there into a mudroom. And finally, the front without the portico. We have triple window there, 6/6, flanked by 4/4 windows in the front.
Thank you, David. And then if you go to the next one, it's the proposed second residence in the rear. And the board might remember that you had seen renderings of this, and David has now refined it into drawing. So this is the rear structure. Merrimack Court sits 7 to 8 feet lower in elevation than the Merrimack Street side of the property. In addition, the footprint of this house is 10% less than the footprint of the existing structure at 342 Merrimack. David, do you want to talk a little bit about the materials that you're going to use on the renovation and restoration of the historic house?
Going back to the historic house, in keeping with Dan's kind of love of old things and woodworking, he is going to keep, I think, the majority of those clapboards he thinks are in fine shape, and wherever they're rotted, he will replace in kind with exactly the same clapboard. Believe they're pine, not cedars. And he's in the business, so he can kind of find those nicer materials. So the materials will basically be the same. The shingles, the asphalt shingles will stay the same for the roof, but the trim on the rear will be more than likely be wood, even on the rear side. I had mentioned, you could go with things other than a mahogany, or you could go with AZEK or something like that. But he on the rear piece. But I believe he will keep the wood throughout, even on the new corner boards toward the rear. And he does need a new front door. I expect a Simpson door. It's a fir door, or similar, or to be determined, but a decent, nice, historic looking door there with side lights. Windows, he is replacing the windows. They are single pane, and in fairly bad shape. And those will be replaced. Currently, he's looking at the Marvin Integrity Series for those. The deck on the rear is new, but the balusters and things are from Intex Millwork, which I think is a nice quality, really nice quality. Really can't tell it's not wood in that case, so that will last and be appropriate, I think, on the back side of the building. I think that's about it.
Okay. So I have an echo here. So you want to go down to the back down to the site plan, which is right there. You go. Thank you. So as you can see, here's the site plan. So we have the existing structure, and then the proposed house, which is where the variance was granted. And you can see the difference in the locations and how it sits facing Merrimack Court. So in the next slide, Andy, we've talked about the compliance with the 6C requirements. So the by right development would be to do an addition on the rear of the house and add an accessory structure, standalone accessory structure facing Merrimack Court, which they could do, not necessarily want to do, but that would be the by right development. We proposed granting the preservation restriction. Both the board said that they would be in favor of holding it, and the, in favor of that. And the Historic Commission was in favor of it and in favor of restoring this house. And Mass Historic has been in favor of it. So that would be the public benefit. The proposed second structure would be subordinate to the main structure on the property. There's adequate access for the proposed structure on Merrimack Court. Obviously, Merrimack Court is a public court, public street, and we've retained our dimensional variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. In the application, we have included all the requirements in compliance with the 10H7 criteria, the typical special permit criteria. So we're here tonight, and you can go to the next slide, Andy, please, to get feedback from the board on the specifics of what now we've proposed as the restoration. We need to go back to the Historic Commission because they will need to approve or at least make recommendations for approval of the details of the restoration to the planning board for inclusion in the preservation restriction. But in addition, we need to go back to the Historical Commission so they can essentially issue a demo delay approval for the removal of the portico and probably the two-story shed addition in the back, because we have that dated. It's not on the 1924 plan, but it's unclear. So if we're going to go for the removal of the portico, we'll just have them look at and remove, and sign off on the removal of that second two-story addition in the back. And then get their approval of the details of the restoration of the front house and the specifics, so that we have plans, or I think it's called Exhibit B, potentially in the preservation restriction, and then come back to the planning board for final approval. There was mention by Jennifer that potentially we would need to go to the Conservation Commission. This came up about a year and a half ago as well, and I'm having Tom Hughes look at it. He believes we're outside of the 100-foot buffer, which is on the opposite side of the street. And if it's a close question, we'll get a sign off from the Conservation Commission, but that should not be an issue because there's certainly no resource area on the property itself. So we would like feedback from the planning board, and then a continuance probably for a month so that we can get into the Historic Commission and come back.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we start the feedback process, I just want to check to see if there's any public comment. Andy, can you take care of that, please?
Sure. If there's anybody who wishes to make public comment on this application, just use the raise hand feature in Zoom. I don't currently see anybody who's indicating a desire to do that.
Okay, then we'll close the public comment section and bring it back into the board for comments. Let me leave it open to board members to make their comments, and then we'll look at the findings and criteria as needed, just so that we can have a complete review and the applicant knows what we'd like to hear about at our next meeting. So board members, please chime in.
This is Ann. I have a question. The application references both the Newburyport Historic Commission and Mass. And who is it that is proposed to hold that preservation restriction?
It would be a preservation. So here's what's happening right now. So we said we'd be willing to have either one hold it. But Mass Historic has agreed that the property is historic, it's within the district, and they would approve a restriction. So the Newburyport Historic Commission would hold it, but would be approved by Mass Historic, so it would be perpetual.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah, they're trying not to, Mass Historic is trying not to hold restrictions, but to approve them.
Okay, thank
Is that new, Lisa?
It's in the last 2 years.
Uh-huh.
And it's mostly, I think, personally, I think it's because of how the CPA has taken off.
Uh-huh.
And it's put a lot of pressure on Mass Historic. And so if they approve it and the local commission holds it, it still has the perpetual obligation on the property.
Okay, that was really what I wanted to find out.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes. Which is why, by the way, we got there before we even came into the board initially. It's why we got Mass Historic to review this and give us a letter.
Great.
Anyone else?
I have a question. This is Rick. I think I like the plan a lot. I just have a question about the site plan. I see that the proposed house is going on what is existing, part of what is now a gravel driveway. But the plan also shows a sidewalk going from the back of the barn to Merrimack Court. And I was wondering whether that is actually part of this proposal, or to switch the access, the walkway from one side of the lot to the other. And if it is the proposal, is there something going to happen at the back of the barn because there's no door there right now?
Oh, I see the proposed sidewalk. I think Dave Owls put that in there. So I think so that no, there's nothing going to happen at the back of the barn, but they want to be able to access all the way through the property to Merrimack Court. But I think there might be a door in the back of the barn. David, do you remember if there's a door in the back of that barn?
I have a photo. I could look it up very quickly. I can't remember, honestly. I don't believe so. Yeah, there it is. There's a slider to the side, to that side there, but no door.
Rick, let me talk to the client and get a little more specifics on that back area for you relative to the parking and the sidewalk.
Yeah, because it seems like it's just switching the walking path from one side of the lot to the other, and neither one seems to, I guess moving it to the north, plan north, would keep it away from the front door of the proposed house. Maybe that's what the purpose is.
I think, and away from it, because, it's going to be owned by some, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
This is Bonnie. I have a question also on the site plan here. The proposed house still seems to have an open space in front of it. I don't know if it's gravel or what. Is it still going to be used for parking?
Right. So I believe that it is still going to be used for parking. So we need parking back there. But again, I can get that clarified, Bonnie, before the next meeting and get that area cleaned up so it more clearly shows proposed conditions.
Yeah, I'm really questioning what that, I'd walked by it today and it didn't look like it was parking for this parcel at all. It looked like it was 4 spaces that are used by somebody else.
No,
Yeah, do you know if it's theirs? And it says no parking,
it's all theirs. Yeah, it's all theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought the idea of the dimensional variance was so that proposed house could be moved closer to the street and have a normal street fronting, with a front yard of some sort. To have cars parked there doesn't seem like it's appropriate.
So we got the, so I hear what you're saying, and we reduced that by 10 feet. We had it pulled way back.
Mm-hmm.
So we reduced it by 10 feet. And if I go back to my notes from our original meeting, I think that was kind of the compromise between that right on the street and not. So because we do need some parking back there, but I understand what you're saying about not having it right in front of the house.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good point. And let me talk to the client as well as the engineer.
And to that point, this is Leah. I'm wondering why there couldn't be a driveway on the side of the house. Like, which is sort of
Yeah.
standard parking.
Yep.
Also, I would like to see where the other houses are to either side of it. In other words, what its relationship to the street is relative to its neighbors.
So there's nothing to the, but I'm just going to call it south on this view, okay? There's no house immediately to the south. I will find out where that house is on the opposite side.
I looked at it today and they're garages, they're backs of houses as you move out Merrimack Court. I don't know what direction that is. Is that south? Yeah. But related to that is the fact that there is a, let's see, I made a note of it. On the corner of Merrimack Court, as you're starting down this road, behind 340 Merrimack Street, there's a garage with no curb. And then you get to 338, which is the house that's next door to the proposed, to the property now. It has a garage in the back of it. It has a curb with grass. And then there's nothing at all in front of this property, which is now going to have a house there. And I'm wondering, I think Andy had mentioned to me earlier that, or it says, oh no, it says here in the staff report, the tree and sidewalk ordinance may kick in. So I think there's some more work that has to be done on the streetscape there.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm certainly hearing everybody loud and clear on that.
Okay. All right. We have all of the, let's see, we'll go back. Section 6C special permit. You've spoken to the benefits and all the elements there, except for the last one says the proposed residential structures shall comply with all other applicable zoning regulations. And the staff report says the new structure will comply with zoning setbacks as shown on the attached plans, except for the front setback requirement. And I think you mean for the second structure for which the applicant has been granted a variance. So that needs to be added in there.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to have all these clean so we can go right through them and just say, check them off when we get ready for the decision.
Right, so that's the staff report you're talking about.
Yes, but this is in reference to the special permit criteria for 6C.
Yeah, no, it's a clarification. I understand.
Okay, yeah, okay. The section 10H7 looks to be met, as do, there are draft special conditions here. Have you seen those? Oh yes, we're talking about that with the, you're going to meet with the Historical Commission and if necessary, the Conservation Commission, and
right.
Then with tree and sidewalk issues.
Correct.
Okay, does anybody have any other outstanding issues that they should address before the next meeting? All right, are we ready for a motion to continue this hearing to June 3rd? Do I have anyone taking that up?
So moved, Dan. Oh,
Andy, if I could just jump in for a second. We do have someone in the public who's raised their hand. I don't know if they're interested in commenting on this application at this point, but.
I'll reopen the public comment and find out.
Hi, this is, I'm sorry, we missed the public comment. But the sidewalk,
This is Sam Kimball. from
Sam Kimball,
344.
344 Merrimack Street. Just wondering about the sidewalk that appears to be between our two properties.
Why that's necessary. And there's also, it's very wet in that area and how that's affects the plan.
So if I could.
Well, can we, yeah, go ahead.
So this would be so what's shown on the plan is a walkway from Merrimack Court to the back of the barn. It's not technically a sidewalk like a public sidewalk. It would be private for the property owner. But as I just said, and maybe you just gone on a little bit later, We're going to rework the back of this with the engineer and the property owner to discuss the issues that were brought up by the board.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all in the public, Andy? Do we have any other public comment?
No, that's the only one. Thank you. We're all set.
Okay, we'll close it. Okay. Okay, I'll take a motion to continue this hearing to June 3rd, please.
And so moved.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second that. It's Leah.
Okay, and I need a roll call on that. James? James?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Leah?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
MJ?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
And me, yes. So we'll see you on June 3rd for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome, David. Thank you. All right. The close of the public hearing section of our meeting. We'll go to other business. The request for a minor modification at 262 Merrimack Street, otherwise known as the Toll Project, a landscaping issue. Do we have anyone here to discuss that? Andy?
Yes, actually. So it's my understanding actually that, oh, sorry, we're referring right now to the 262.
Did I give the wrong address? Yeah.
Yeah, that's not toll.
It's not? I'm
No.
sorry. What are we
No,
talking
it's
about?
further toward town, right?
Minor modification.
Hi,
Applicant
guys.
seeks to
I can
modify
speak to
approved
this.
landscaping plan.
Yeah, we have a member from the public here ready to speak to that, Bonnie.
Okay,
Yep.
please introduce yourself.
My name's Cameron. I work with Gemini Property Management. 262 Merrimack Street is actually one of the residential units next to the toll building. It's part of the Landing Condo Trust. And just to speak to the project, overall, we're just looking for some permission to alter some of the landscaping there in regards to the shrub selections. The shrubs that were originally installed now are going on about 2-3 years of maturity. And a big portion of the Rosa rugosa bushes are proving to be a big issue. And right now it's kind of still in the infancy, so it's going to get worse. Specifically, those shrubs, the Rosa rugosa bushes, have what they call runners, and they're like vines that grow outward. So typically 6 to 8 feet is common for one shrub once it gets to its maturity state. But the amount of Rosa rugosa bushes that are planted in those small beds are so many that they're going to suffocate, and it's going to be detrimental to the success of the surrounding shrubs. So we've gone out and we've gone through LM landscaping architecture, which you can see right now. And Lise McNaughton has helped us develop this plan, which includes a lot of substitutions of shrubs that would replace those Rosa rugosa bushes, improve sustainability, but also add to the appeal of these 3 buildings, which lead to the rear parking lot of the toll building, in respects to their blooming seasons. Because right now, the current landscaping right now is pretty much just one blooming season. They'll get a lot of flower, and then for the rest of the year, the other 3 seasons, you're not going to see anything. So what Lisa's suggesting, pretty much they'll have alternating blooming seasons. So at pretty much spring, summer, and fall, there'll be something that's blooming, which will add to the curb appeal for these areas. They're also low maintenance, and that'll reduce the overall cost for the association, but will help with the upkeep.
And that's it?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. If you see building 264 and 268, those don't necessarily apply to this, but the 262 building has a preservation agreement. So I felt like this fell within the realm of more of a major type of transformation. I know that it's kind of in between minor and major, but I didn't want to move forward without getting the approval from the board.
No, it's still considered a minor. That's fine. Any comments from the board or questions you have? Then I guess.
I would make a motion that it's minor and approve it.
Go for it.
I just did.
Okay, second?
Second, Rick.
Any further discussion?
No.
All right, let's just take a roll call on that. James?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Leah?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
MJ?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
And I'm yes as well. Okay, that's approved. Thank you very much. We appreciate it, Cameron. And
Thank you. I
thanks for
appreciate
coming
it
to
too.
see us.
Thanks.
Okay. First A&R of the evening, 2 East Boylston Street and 138 State Street. All 3 A&Rs come from Attorney Mead, so we'll turn it over to you, Lisa, for a.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the owners of 2 East Boylston and actually one of the units at 138 State Street, what the applicants are doing here is actually taking a portion of the rear yard of 138 State Street and carving it off, and it becomes a new lot area for the East Boylston Street property. The East Boylston Street property was totally conforming and they just wanted to have a bigger yard. The zoning board has granted the variances necessary for the State Street property. And so it's gotten its prior approval, and that's pretty much it.
Any questions? I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved, Rick.
Second?
Second, Ann.
Thank you. Roll call. James?
Yes.
Beth? Beth?
Yes, sorry.
Anne?
Yes.
Leah?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
MJ?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
And I'm yes as well. So that's approved. You're welcome. Next A&R is 332 Merrimack Street and 7 Savory Street.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this lot was told, it's always been 2 lots, but they had merged because the new lot 5 was non-conforming and merged with the front lot. So the applicant went to the Zoning Board of Appeals and worked with the neighbors to split this lot, and lot 4 got the necessary variances to do that. As a condition of that, with an agreement of the neighbors, lot 5 had a condition that a residential structure could not be constructed on lot 5, and an accessory structure could be, so long as it was accessory to one of the adjacent parcels. One of the adjacent parcel owners wants to purchase this and potentially put a garage or something like that on it. So that's the condition and the variance, which will be recorded with this, and we would seek your approval.
And yet this application says on it that it was an application for a non-buildable lot. Was that how it came in, and then the variance made this condition on it?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I want to pursue that. So the application does say it conform, it is an approval not required plan, or does not require approval because one of the lots is designated as a non-buildable lot. So there was was there a variance for lot 5?
Yeah.
I thought the variance was for lot 4.
So because the lots had merged and they were technically one, the variance controlled, so the zoning board had control over the whole thing. And they granted the variance necessary for the setbacks and the frontage on lot 4, but said they would only do that if lot 5 had a restriction that a residential structure could not be constructed upon it, but that only an accessory structure could. Because what they didn't want to have, what the neighbors all talked about was, for example, let's say the Olsons were to buy it. You know, I don't know if the Olsons are interested or not, but if they were to buy it, they could expand their house onto that lot. None of the neighbors wanted that, but they didn't care if an accessory structure was constructed upon it because it wouldn't have the same impact and it doesn't have the same setback requirements. And so, but they didn't want, for instance, an accessory structure or a structure that wasn't a residence for any other purpose, like boat storage that wasn't related to anything. So the zoning board granted the variances for lot 4 and conditioned lot 5 that you couldn't put a residential structure on there, but you could put an accessory structure so long as the accessory structure was accessory to one of the adjacent parcels.
So, okay, I'm still confused. And the reason I'm confused is an accessory structure under the zoning has to be on the same lot as the principal structure which it serves.
That's right. So this, if an adjacent lot purchases this, because this is non-conforming, it will merge.
Okay, so really the wording on it is, I don't think is accurate because it says accessory to a residential use on an adjacent lot, but what you're saying is it won't be on an adjacent lot because it'll be part of the lot that it merges with.
Correct.
And I don't like the wording.
Well, it's taken directly from the decision of the ZBA.
I agree with you, Rick. I think it needs to be altered. It's not accurate.
I know that
with which it merges. Do you want to say that?
I think I would say that it. I mean, this a notation, when you put a notation on saying this is not a buildable lot, if you just had a flat notation according to the way it's supposed to be for an approval not required plan, then when somebody merged that with another lot, then that notation would go away because it would be no longer a non-buildable lot. You know what I mean? The notation only applies while it's a separate lot.
Well, I mean, we could say that the lot 5 was subject to the variance issued. We could directly just refer to the variance.
Well,
which is also referred to in the note.
Yeah, see, the thing is that the variance restricts something, but the variance did not give permission beyond that restriction. It's unfortunate that could have been cleaner.
Rick, what do you think could happen with this language versus any change of language that you're proposing?
I think that with this language, anybody could come in and say that an accessory building can be put here without this lot being merged to an adjoining lot. And then we'd have a fight over whether it was really an accessory building, because by definition, accessory building is on the same lot.
Well, but it says it shall be accessory to or a part of a residential use on an adjacent lot.
I would say accessory use is a use that is accessory to or part of a residential use on the same lot, once this lot is merged or something like that. And it seems to be saying.
Well, that's what I suggested, like upon merger, right? A part of the
residential. It wouldn't be upon the same lot upon merger or something like, you can't, it wouldn't be an adjacent lot upon merger.
But you say with which it has merged.
Okay, sure. Sure, go ahead. I guess, I mean, it's too bad that that was added because it confuses. It's not what the way that it's supposed to be for an approval not required plan. But if we can stay in our decision, like it was not a decision. It's just signing a plan, I guess.
Well, but if you say, so here's what here's, because I don't know that you have the time. I think your 21 days will have passed by the time you meet next. So you could, I'm just telling you that you don't sign the plan. We'll have the plan changed to add it to say with which it has merged. And then you can get it signed.
Okay.
You can approve it so you don't lose your 21 days, but you're not going to sign it till we have the engineer make that change.
Right. That's fine. That's fine with me. I guess just for the future, we should try to have better coordination between the boards, because this kind of makes a mess of something that could be quite clean.
It was a lot of discussion amongst all of the players, and I think the zoning board did its best to try to address the concerns of the neighbors.
I understand that, and I appreciate that there may be wording in the zoning decision that would clarify it, but I think the solution you've just come up with is better because it's on the plan, the language that says more clearly what it was meant to indicate. So
I don't have a problem. I mean, if you're okay with what I've just suggested, I'll just ask Jeff Hoffman or Chris York to add with which it has merged on it before you sign it.
Okay.
So
this is Andy, if I could just note, so I guess as I understand that would be the motion to approve the endorsement of the plan subject to the revised language noted and approved by applicant's counsel.
Yes.
let's make sure Linda got that, please.
Could Andy read it one more time?
So that would be a motion to, and again, I'll leave it to the board members, but a motion to approve and endorse the plan subject to the revised language that has been noted by counsel for the applicant, that language be provided on a revised version of the plan prior to endorsement.
Oh my God. Okay. Subject to the revised language provided by counsel.
By applicant's counsel, yep.
And what came out?
Prior to endorsement.
Prior to endorsement. All right, great. Thanks.
And I have a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Thank you, Rick. And second?
I'll second it, Leah.
Thank you. And I'll do the roll call if there's no further discussion. Yeah. James?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Leah?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
MJ?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
And yes. Okay, that is approved and endorsed, or whatever the language is. And the final one is 9 Iris Street. I believe that's on the island, is that correct?
It is. It's on the island. Lisa Mead Talent Costa, 30 Green Street, on behalf of Norm and Stephanie Colby, who have lived out there forever. And it's actually originally Norm's dad's house. This actually is 3 lots. And we're just removing a lot line, which is, and that becomes a totally conforming lot. So we're removing that middle lot line. It says lot line to be abandoned. So we're removing that. So that lot becomes totally conforming. And then the individual lot will be left as 140, which is not a buildable lot.
Okay, looks pretty straightforward. Any comments? I'll take a motion to approve this A&R. Motion to endorse.
So moved.
Yeah.
Don, it's Don, so moved.
Okay. Second, please.
MJ's second.
Okay. And roll call, James?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Leah?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
MJ,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
and I say yes as well. So that one is endorsed. Thank
Thank
you.
you. And it's been lovely to spend the evening with all of you.
Oh, thank you for hanging in there. We appreciate
All
it.
right, take care.
Okay, good night.
Be well.
All right, we'll go right to the minutes of April 15th. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Rick?
Second?
I'll second, Don.
Thank you. Discussion, they're just minor edits that I've submitted to Linda, and I believe there was something else in there, but it was all minor.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've removed the public hearing from the heading.
Okay, good. Oh, on Caitlin's recommendation. Okay. So they're in order as amended, minutes as amended. We'll take a roll call. James?
I wasn't at that meeting, so I'll abstain.
Okay, thank you. Beth?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Leah?
Yes.
I think you weren't at that meeting. That's our last meeting.
Oh,
Were you here then?
no.
I don't think you were. Okay, so you have to abstain. Rick?
Yes.
MJ?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
And I'm yes. Okay, are there any updates, Andy, that you want to include at this time?
Just one that I would suggest everybody be prepared for a similarly long meeting on the 20th, only because the institution is on that hearing that night, and I expect a good amount of public feedback on that application, assuming it goes forward that night.
Yeah, if anybody has any ideas on how to get through these long discussions, I sure could use it. It doesn't have to be right now, but if you want to give me a call, I'll take any feedback and advice you want to give me.
I think this was as efficient as it could have been. I don't think there's any problem with it.
I think we had a real problem with the windows. I think that I'm not happy with how that went at all. I don't know how we could have improved it, but that's kind of my frustration at this moment.
Yep, but I don't think it's because of the offsite, the Zoom format. I think we would have had the same problem if we were in person.
Yeah. I have allowed for us to just take everything that came at us for May 20th, which I didn't used to do in the past. I don't know if we'll look, Andy, if you can look at that agenda, if there's anything at all that can be to lighten it, please let me know and we can talk about it, or you can approach the applicant. But at this point, I agree with him. It's going to be a long night, even if we didn't have additional things because of the institution. So if there are no other comments, I'll ask for an adjournment.
I have a question. Andy, will you be sending us a Zoom invitation before every meeting, or should we be saving something?
Oh, thanks, Ann, for asking that question. Yeah, so the invitation that was sent to you is applicable to all the planning board meetings. So I would save that. If anybody has trouble finding it, let me know and I can have that invitation automatically resent. But you should retain that and use it for each of the meetings we have as long as we're doing this Zoom thing during COVID. I did actually just for the chair and other members pull up our draft agenda for the 20th just so you could get an idea of what's on that agenda right now. But we'll follow up with the chair like Bonnie asked on the agenda items and the applicants.
Yeah. Okay. So could I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Who
was that?
That was Leah.
Okay.
I'll second.
Don, second.
Take a choice, Linda.
Okay.
All right, I have to do the roll call, guys. Hang in there. James.
Yes.
Beth,
Yes.
Anne.
Yes.
Leah.
Yes.
Rick.
Yes.
MJ.
Yes.
Don.
Yes.
Yes, for me as well. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, Caitlin and Andy, as well as Linda.
Okay, good night.
Welcome. Have a good night.
Yep.